Chapter 479. In the martial hall, the cultivators exchanged glances, suddenly finding themselves in a bit of a predicament. Indeed, according to the rules, any cultivator affiliated with the 10,000 Immortal Alliance could apply for certain rewards from the martial hall if they managed to kill a member of the Five Elders Association. Killing 4 opposing nascent soul cultivators was a significant achievement no matter which region it occurred in. However, this young master before them had gone too far. The 4 cultivators from the Five Elders Association were obliterated to the point that not even their remains were left. Not to mention the valuable bodies, limbs, or remnants of their souls. While the battle results were impressive, the actual significance wasn't as great. If they didn't give a reward, the news would spread, tarnishing their reputation. If they did reward him, the martial hall in Congyansi was already tight on budget this year. If they allowed Li Fan to take such a large sum, how would the rest of the brothers survive for the remainder of the year? Moreover, Master Li Fan didn't seem to be someone in need of contribution points. Even if the martial hall gave a generous reward, it likely wouldn't satisfy his appetite. More importantly, this person was now quite renowned, and trying to suppress or force him to, voluntarily, give up the reward wasn't an option. Thus, how to structure the reward in a way that satisfied both parties was indeed a challenging issue to discuss. Li Fan sat there, calm and composed, giving the impression that he wouldn't leave until he received a satisfactory result. The cultivators of the martial hall frowned slightly, secretly transmitting messages to discuss. After several rounds of negotiation and probing, they finally reached a conclusion that pleased everyone. With this outstanding achievement, Li Fan was appointed as a special deacon of the martial hall, officially entering the system of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. All his rewards were given in the form of contributions points. After the cultivators of the martial hall calculated, they determined that this was enough to raise Li Fan's authority level to level 16 in one go. To put it into perspective, a typical cultivator within the system would need at least 34 years of hard work to reach this level. Yet Li Fan achieved it in an instant. The number of contribution points no longer mattered to Li Fan. Receiving contribution points was an outcome he couldn't have hoped for more. Thus, Li Fan readily agreed. What followed was completing the necessary procedures in collaboration with the martial hall. The martial hall submitted the request, and the political hall swiftly approved it. After going through the formalities at the Jade platform of Heart Inquiry, Li Fan officially became a member of the martial hall in Congyansi. Then came the distribution of merit points. After Li Fan left the central core area of 10,000 Immortal Island, apart from the aura of being an ancient cultivator from the Heavenly Mechanism sect, skilled in deduction, he also gained another layer of identity, a member of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance system, with level 16 authority. Now that I'm under the protection of an official title, even if someone wants to act against me, they can't do it openly. As Li Fan walked along, he felt much safer. Having gone through several lifetimes within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, Li Fan had come to deeply understand the importance of order and rules in the current Immortal Alliance. Even a Dao integration Immortal Sage, if they violated the rules, would face consequences. The case of Guan Xingshou, who lost a layer of cultivation and was exiled to Lanline Prefecture, was a vivid example from the previous lifetime. Having an official position in the system was undoubtedly an additional protective talisman. However, to temporarily extricate himself from the commotion caused by killing 4 nascent soul cultivators, Li Fan immediately secluded himself in the Tianshuan mirror. A golden core cultivator slaying nascent soul cultivators, especially in a 4-on-1 situation, was an extraordinary feat. Such an event would cause an explosion of discussions. There was no need to intentionally stir the pot. The cultivators themselves eagerly discussed and spread the story of this miraculous event. Some doubted it, others were curious. And some, itching for a fight, wanted to challenge Li Fan themselves. But when they learned that Li Fan had purchased a sharp weapon from the Tianshuan mirror to kill the 4 nascent soul cultivators, their reactions were strikingly unanimous. Money really is a wonderful thing. Yes, for some reason, the secret of the assassination, which should have been highly classified and known only to the cultivators in the martial hall, spread just as quickly as the news of Li Fan's achievement. The truth behind the incident had spread across all the regions of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, along with Li Fan's reputation. Regardless of their opinion on Li Fan, cultivators admired his ability to lead everyone toward wealth. As a result, the number of cultivators seeking advice from He Zhenghao surged. Even Taoist he became somewhat famous among the cultivators. But amidst all the external chaos, Li Fan paid no attention. He cut off all communication with the outside world and immersed himself in cultivation within the Tianquan mirror. Time flew by, and before long, the end of the 9th year arrived. The August period of the previous year, when Li Fan last entered the fallen immortal realm, had passed, and he was suddenly awakened from seclusion by a premonition. Mr. Bai, the creation furnace technique. A glimmer of anticipation flashed in Li Fan's eyes. After a bit of preparation, he chanted, "Blessings to the heavenly Venerable of Xuanwang." In an instant, the scene before him blurred. When he regained clarity, he found himself once again in the fallen immortal realm. The first thing Li Fan did after entering the fallen immortal realm was not to observe his surroundings but to recall the teachings of Mr. Bai's creation furnace technique in his mind. The brilliant words immediately resurfaced, allowing him once again to witness the supreme path and profound art. Li Fan was captivated, completely immersed. Marvelous. He sighed once more in admiration. "Little Black, you're finally awake." At that moment, an ill-timed voice dragged him out of that wonderful state. It was Shu Kei's somewhat foolish voice. Feeling a wave of annoyance, Li Fan swiped at Shu Kei's head with a claw. Scanning the surrounding environment, he noticed that it was different from the landscape of the beast-taming sect where he had previously been. "What happened after I fell into slumber?" Li Fan asked Shu Kei through telepathy. Little Black, you can finally talk." Shu Kei, looking surprised and a bit slow-witted, asked cheerfully. After scratching his head a few more times, Shu Kei finally recounted the entire story to Li Fan. It turned out that after Li Fan swallowed Song Yang's Immortal Tiger and fell into a deep slumber, Shu Kei followed the Jade Token's guidance from senior brother Luya and successfully met with Luya and the wise beast Emperor Sanmo. When the Emperor Sanmo saw the sleeping heavenly fate mystical bird, he said some cryptic words and then inserted a strand of white hair into Li Fan's body. After that, Li Fan fell into an even deeper sleep atop Shu Kei's head. He only woke up now. "So, you're saying I've been asleep for 3 years? And you've come to this valley world to search for a creature called the Rift Whale?" Li Fan asked in a deep voice. "That's right, Little Black, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to find this big guy. Even though it's massive, it hides in the clouds and can even conceal its form. Normal detection spells and magic tools are completely useless. It's really hard to find," Shu Kei complained. Chapter 480. To encounter them, it's entirely up to luck. You have to fly into each patch of cloud and investigate personally. Shu Kei sighed, touching a colorful pouch hanging at his waist, muttering, "Even finding them isn't enough, we still need to figure out how to catch them." These creatures, despite their large size, are actually more agile than eels. If there's even the slightest movement nearby, they'll vanish into thin air. Several times, I was so close to catching them, yet they still managed to escape. Sigh, I don't know when I'll be able to complete the task that senior brother Luya assigned to me. It's the first time he's entrusted me with something this important. I can't afford to mess it up. As Shu Kei rambled on, Li Fan listened quietly, deep in thought. According to Shu Kei's description, the Rift World whales at this time were quite different from the ones Li Fan had encountered thousands of years later. Not only were they several times larger, but their temperament had also changed, becoming less timid and even highly aggressive. They seem more like a subspecies with different traits. With Shu Kei's luck, capturing a group of rift whales shouldn't be too difficult. Once he catches enough of them, using the techniques of the beast-taming sect for selective breeding. Recalling a conversation he had overheard between Luya and Emperor Sanmo in his past life, Li Fan's mind began to ponder. Is capturing rift whales actually something Mr. Bai requested? Could it be that the group of rift whales roaming outside the small world was also his doing? Li Fan tugged on Shu Kei's hair in frustration, feeling increasingly confused. When he first saw the group of void rift whales pushing the mortal small world away from the cultivation world, Li Fan had once lamented, just how much did those ancient cultivators hate mortals. From his then single-minded pursuit of immortality, separating mortals from the cultivation world and cutting off their path to immortality seemed like a punishment. But now, after experiencing many things in the cultivation world and understanding how cultivators treated mortals, Li Fan had begun to have different thoughts. Cultivators saw mortals as ants, taking what they wanted from them at will. They even treated them like livestock, using formations to extract their life essence. And that was now, when mortals carried the immortal mortal plague, which restrained some of the cultivators. Behaviors. In the ancient cultivation world, mortal suffering was even worse. They were used as ingredients for refining longevity fruits, and when cultivators fought each other, they wouldn't care at all about the lives of mortals. Escaping the control of immortals might not be such a bad thing for mortals after all. Could it be that, as the orphans of Ningyuan City said, Mr. Bai is truly a great benefactor with the world in his heart? This thought couldn't help but emerge in Li Fan's mind. Whatever the truth is, I can't draw conclusions yet. I need to gather more information. With that, Li Fan scratched Shu Ke hard again, urging him to hurry up and find the rift whales. Meanwhile, Li Fan nestled in Shu Ke's hair, practicing the creation furnace technique, while also using the Heaven's Mandate as mind secret art. He helped Shu Ke consolidate his luck. Despite repeated failures, Shu Ke, usually carefree, started to grow anxious. Rift whales, where are you? He kept mumbling, his eyes filled with desperation. Li Fan suddenly lifted his head. He noticed that the purple aura of luck above Shu Ke's head had dispersed slightly with his murmuring, though where it went, he couldn't tell. The disappearance of luck had an immediate effect. Whereas before they might have seen traces of the rift whales once every 10 days or so, now sightings became more frequent. Through repeated attempts, Shu Ke slowly figured out a way to approach the rift whales without being detected. However, capturing a mythical beast with the 10,000 beasts bag was no easy task. Especially for someone like Shu Ke, who was a novice. After a prolonged struggle, the whale still managed to escape. Drenched in sweat and nearly exhausted, Shu Ke slumped to the ground, filled with frustration. But soon, he regained his spirit and set off again to find the next rift whale. With his relentless efforts, the pillar of purple gold luck continued to dwindle. The depletion was much faster than what Li Fan could replenish using the secret technique. Eventually, it appeared slightly dimmer than before. But it wasn't all in vain. 4 months later, after enduring countless hardships, Shu Ke finally managed to capture a rift whale. The 10,000 beasts bag floated quietly in the air, no longer shaking violently. Shu Ke grabbed it tightly, shouting in excitement. I've finally completed the task. Now I can go back and report to senior brother Lu Ya. Shao Qing, let's go home, Shu Ke called out his azure luan bird, joyfully hopping onto its back. Li Fan's gaze sharpened as he focused on the bird, carefully examining it. The azure luan bird, however, completely ignored Li Fan, affectionately rubbing its neck against Shu Ke instead. It then spread its wings and flew off toward the heavens. To think that, thousands of years later, it would be transformed into the Empire's holy master, Li Fan mused, sensing the familiar aura around Shao Qing and confirming his earlier suspicions. After more than 3 years apart, the azure luan bird seemed even more majestic than when Li Fan had last seen it in the Immortal Falls realm. Not only was its flight speed several times faster, but during the journey, a faint blue light radiated from it, enveloping both Shu Ke and Li Fan, blocking out the sound of the wind, making the ride more comfortable. Shu Ke, who hadn't rested in a long time, fell into a deep sleep on the bird's back. Shao Qing continued to fly diligently. After watching for a while, Li Fan slowly retracted his gaze. As the azure luan bird flew higher and higher, Li Fan stood atop Shu Ke's head and looked down. Only then did he realize that this small world wasn't so much a canyon shaped like a thread of sky. Rather, it looked more like a scar, forcibly carved by a sharp weapon. Yet, this scar also brought life. Apart from the long fissure, the rest of the world was nothing but scorched earth. Scarlet flames scorched the ground, and molten lava flowed savagely. All of these destructive forces were held at bay, unable to cross the fissure. The power that carved out the canyon lingered, preventing the flames from encroaching. Thus, amidst this hellish small world, a lush and vibrant paradise had been created. Your perspective shapes your answers. Li Fan recalled the issue of mortals separating from the Xuanwang realm and had a moment of insight. Passing through an invisible passage in the sky, they returned to the Xuanwang realm. The pale white light slowly faded, and when Li Fan could finally see clearly, he was surprised. Because they had just flown out of a painting. Chapter 481. A somewhat worn ancient painting hung on the wall. The scene depicted in the painting was exactly the canyon world where Shu Ke and Li Fan had previously been, capturing the rift whale. In this room, there were over 30 other scrolls hanging on the walls. What surprised Li Fan was that some of the paintings seemed to be enveloped in a layer of mysterious energy, preventing outsiders from peering into them. Even with his powers as the heavenly fate mystical bird, he could not discern the contents of these paintings. A azure Luan bird flew out from one of the scrolls, gently placing Shuke on the ground. Afterward, it transformed into a streak of green light and disappeared into his embrace. Shuke is back. A young cultivator who had been dozing off in the room immediately brightened up and rushed outside, shouting. In no time, the already cramped room was flooded with a crowd of cultivators. It's good that he's back. He must have successfully found that rift whale, right? The hard days are finally over. Yeah, once Shuke returns, that guy Luya should head back too, right? That jerk, always bullying people because he has a strange beast. Too outrageous. Senior brother Lu, last time you sparred with Luya, he didn't even summon his beast, the Tian Wu, and you still ended up begging for mercy. That was a mistake. If I had another chance. Shish, Luya is here. Ah, the noisy group instantly fell silent. They even made way for him, allowing Luya to walk in smoothly. Luya, with yellow hair and a cold expression, walked straight towards the sleeping Shuke, ignoring the varied reactions from the other cultivators around him. He glanced at Li Fan briefly before his eyes softened when they landed on Shuke's face. With a gentle wave of his hand, he lifted Shuke along with Li Fan. Striding out of the room, a beast with the body of a tiger and the face of a man appeared in an instant. Tian Wu, the aura emanating from the beast made Li Fan slightly uncomfortable, causing him to instinctively shrink deeper into Shuke's hair. The tiger-bodied, human-faced beast let out a roar, and Luya leapt onto its back. The beast Tian Wu glanced around in a show of might before soaring into the sky. 3 years of hospitality from the Divine Brush sect, Luya is deeply grateful. One day, I shall repay you all handsomely. For now, I bid you farewell. There's no need to see me off. Luya cupped his hands towards the ground below and spoke in a loud voice. Without waiting for a response from the Divine Brush sect, he flew off on Tian Wu, disappearing quickly into the sky. Such arrogance. He's only relying on the power of the beast-taming sect. HMPH, Luya's cultivation is already at the late nascent soul stage. With that Tian Wu beast, even our senior brother might not be his match. Yeah, but it's not like we can compete. We can't just ask the elders to step in, right? Forget it. With our sect leader in his current state, our senior brother is better off handling things. Before leaving, Li Fan faintly overheard some of their discussions. Luya, however, paid no attention and continued flying away with Shuke. The landscape below constantly shifted as they traveled, passing through plains and mountains. After more than 20 days of travel, the surroundings finally began to look familiar. They had returned to the territory of the beast-taming sect. Without the white fog barrier, it was much easier for those in ancient times to travel freely. As Li Fan thought this, he sensed that his time in the fallen immortal realm was nearing its end. Finally, after sleeping throughout the journey, Shuke was woken up by Luya. Senior brother Luya. Shuke groggily rubbed his eyes and, seeing Luya standing tall with his robes billowing in the wind, asked in confusion. Where are we? Still thinking he was dreaming, Shuke glanced around. Li Fan gave him a sharp claw strike, jolting Shuke awake. Wow, beast-taming sect, I'm back. Recognizing the familiar surroundings, Shuke jumped in excitement. Luya smiled faintly. He patted Shuke's head and began asking about his 3 years of searching for the rift whale. Shuke, of course, complained endlessly about his hardships. After comforting and praising him, Luya's expression turned serious as he brought up an important matter. Next, I have a task of even greater importance for you. Hearing that he had to head out again right after returning, Shuke's face fell. However, seeing Luya's solemn expression, Shuke nodded and agreed. Senior brother Luya, what is it? I need you to go to Nanming and deliver something for me, Luya said gravely. Nanming, I think I've heard of that place. Shuke scratched his head, pondering for a moment before realizing. Oh, it's the place with lots of demonic beasts, right? Just as Li Fan was about to listen more closely, he suddenly noticed the surrounding scenery and sounds becoming blurry. Despite his reluctance, he could not defy the rules of the fallen immortal realm. In the next moment, after a dizzying sensation, Li Fan returned to the Tianquan mirror. Divine Brush Sect, Nanming. Li Fan reflected on his experiences in the fallen immortal realm. After a brief pause, he began searching within the Tianquan mirror. The Divine Brush Sect was a mid-tier sect during ancient times. They practiced a unique path, using brushes as their primary tool. It was said that both their calligraphy and paintings could communicate with the divine. The disciples of this sect were all highly skilled in calligraphy and painting, and there were even legends of them bringing creatures to life through their art. Unfortunately, after several great calamities in the world, very few of their works survived. Even when Li Fan had visited the Divine Relic Museum, he didn't find any surviving works from the sect. In today's cultivation world, there are few records of Divine Brush sect cultivators. Most of those mentioned were obscure figures with little fame. The only notable figure in history was a former sect leader, Chu Yuhong. Chu Yuhong, at the nascent soul stage, took over as sect leader on the deathbed order of his predecessor. Due to his low cultivation level and weak strength, he was often looked down upon by the sect's disciples. However, out of respect for the sect leader's title, there was no open rebellion. Chu Yuhong didn't seem to mind and treated the disciples kindly, never displaying the authority of a sect leader. Despite this, he diligently fulfilled his duties as sect leader. He managed all sect affairs personally, no matter how small. Externally, he maintained good relations with many neighboring sects. Thanks to his tireless efforts, the Divine Brush sect gradually recovered from the leadership crisis that followed the sudden death of the previous sect leader. Through these accomplishments, the disciples slowly began to recognize Chu Yuhong's leadership. And when one of Chu Yuhong's mortal disciples surpassed him in cultivation, becoming incredibly powerful, Chu Yuhong's position as sect leader was finally secured. Just as things were looking up for the Divine Brush sect, a disaster struck. The talented disciple, the sect's senior brother, was actually a spy sent by another sect, the Pointillism sect. His target was the Divine Brush sect's most prized artifact, the heavenly painting brush. One night, with inside help from the spy, the Pointillism sect launched a surprise attack on the Divine Brush sect. The Divine Brush sect suffered heavy casualties, nearly facing total annihilation. Chapter 482. Just as the disciples of the Divine Brush sect were falling into despair, an event occurred that filled them with even greater anger. Sect leader Chu Yuhong, disregarding the lives of his disciples, fled with the treasured heavenly painting brush. And a significant portion of the sect's treasury, escaping into the void. While his departure did divert some of the attention from the attacking Pointillism sect, as the head of the sect, such a lack of responsibility was unforgivable. Those who were still alive and desperately fighting for their lives felt immense hatred towards Chu Yuhong. Had the enemy not been so ruthless, leaving no survivors, many of them might have surrendered on the spot and switched sides to join the Pointillism sect. In this battle, almost the entire Divine Brush sect was annihilated, with only Chu Yuhong and a few lucky survivors escaping with their lives. Although the Pointillism sect failed to seize the heavenly painting brush, they annexed much of the Divine Brush sect's lands and resources, greatly strengthening their position. They quickly rose to become one of the most prominent sects in the region, their reputation growing significantly. As for Chu Yuhong, he disappeared from the world along with the heavenly painting brush, seemingly vanishing without a trace. 20 years later, one of the surviving disciples from the Divine Brush sect encountered Chu Yuhong and furiously confronted him, demanding to know why he abandoned the sect and fled alone. Chu Yuhong, without any hint of remorse, spoke words that would be remembered throughout the history of the Xuanwang realm. Even if all of you died, it wouldn't matter. As long as I'm alive, the Divine Brush sect still exists. My master entrusted the Divine Brush sect to me before his death, and I will not allow it to be destroyed in my hands. Chu Yuhong's expression was one of complete righteousness. The disciple, hearing this, was left speechless. Though he wanted to argue, no words came out. The disciple's earlier resolve for revenge was forgotten as he stood there in a daze, watching Chu Yuhong leave gracefully. Because of these shocking words, they quickly spread throughout the cultivation world at that time. Some laughed at him, while others saw his statement as profound wisdom. There were even those who couldn't stand Chu Yuhong's actions and wanted to personally confront him. But after this incident, Chu Yuhong disappeared completely, as if he had evaporated from the world. No one ever saw him again. It wasn't until much later, when a great calamity descended upon the world, and the Pointillism sect mysteriously collapsed overnight, that people began to suspect that it might have been Chu Yuhong's doing. To be so selfish for the sake of the greater good is indeed something beyond the understanding of ordinary people. Li Fan pondered deeply, and couldn't help but sigh. Perhaps that's why the Pointillism sect's spy, who had risen to the position of senior brother, chose to betray them and seize power. Once he recognized the true nature of his master, he realized that inheriting the heavenly painting brush through normal means would be impossible. He had no choice but to take drastic measures. Dealing with such an eccentric individual, there really weren't many other options. Li Fan shook his head slightly and began to search for information about the term, Nanming. He managed to find some scattered details about Nanming Demonic Mountain. However, when he tried to dig deeper, he discovered that his access level wasn't high enough. Demonic Mountain, it seems to be related to the lingering demonic beasts in the world. Li Fan's eyes flickered as he noted it down for later. Time passed quickly, and soon, 10 years had gone by. This year, aside from occasional minor skirmishes between border states and the Five Elders Association, most regions remained peaceful. The Kongyan Sea was no exception. As a special associate of the Martial Hall, Li Fan didn't have any specific duties to fulfill. All he needed to do was drop by the Martial Hall occasionally, have some tea, and check in. If he was too busy, he could even spend some of his contribution points to have another cultivator handle things for him. As a result, he lived a fairly leisurely life. After turning in the third collection of 15 million contribution points, amounting to a total of 23 million points, he handed it over to He Zhenghao. He Zhenghao stared at the astronomical number of contribution points in disbelief, stunned for the better part of half a day before he finally regained his composure, his eyes red with emotion. For a brief moment, He Zhenghao entertained the thought of absconding with the points. However, the thought of whose contribution points these were made him shiver, and he quickly abandoned the idea. Unless he defected directly to the Five Elders Association, there was no way he'd live long enough to enjoy the wealth. Regaining his senses, He Zhenghao began returning the contribution points to the investors who had participated in the plan. The cultivators, pleased with their profits, were ecstatic. However, what He Zhenghao said next left them feeling both frustrated and disappointed. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Master Li's contribution plan will be temporarily suspended. With a sigh, He Zhenghao explained, "Everyone, please return home. Once the situation settles and Master Li decides to reopen the plan, I will notify you all." These vague words left much to interpretation. But it was precisely this ambiguity that fueled their imaginations. Unforeseen circumstances. Waiting for things to calm down. This Master Li had been able to defeat even nascent soul cultivators with sheer wealth. Yet now, he was forced to halt the plan due to some external pressure. It must have threatened someone's interests. The gathered cultivators exchanged knowing glances and then fell silent. Though they were frustrated at missing the chance to get rich, they also felt sympathy for Li Fan. "Once things return to normal, be sure to notify me first." In private, each of them made this request to He Zhenghao. Having received many gifts and made a small fortune, He Zhenghao naturally agreed. Li Fan's decision to pause the collection of contribution points was partly due to the rapid growth of the points total, which was becoming a bit overwhelming. He wanted to slow things down temporarily. But he had also received a warning from within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. "Very well, let's let them wait for a while. I'll resume the plan when it's closer to the crimson flame will burn the sea." Li Fan didn't pay much attention to the matter. As the cultivators who had profited from the fourth investment began spending their contribution points to strengthen themselves, a steady stream of feedback flowed back to Li Fan, enriching his cultivation like rivers flowing into the sea. Even without actively cultivating, his cultivation level steadily increased each day. Not to mention that Li Fan had almost never stopped using both awakening pills and enlightenment pills. In just one short year, he had made as much progress as an ordinary cultivator would in decades of hard training. Li Fan felt that his golden core was nearly perfected, and it wouldn't be long before he was ready to form a nascent soul. This year, every 3 months, he made a trip to Shenhua Island to extract some Kunpeng blood essence from Yifeipeng for his research. His understanding of the power of Kunpeng bloodlines grew deeper with each visit. During this time, Li Fan also made another trip to the fallen immortal realm. Shu Ke, acting on Lu Ya's behalf, needed to deliver a wooden box to the South Ming region. This wooden box was of great importance, sealed with several different powers. Li Fan even sensed the aura of the longevity beast emperor, Sanmo, on it. Thus, Li Fan accompanied Shu Ke throughout the journey, riding the Qingluan bird. It seemed that the South Ming region was extremely far from the beast-taming sect. Time ran out before they could reach their destination, so their journey to the fallen immortal realm had to be cut short. And so, time moved forward to the 11th year. This year, the long-sealed cloud-water heavenly palace would reappear in the world. Chapter 483. Kangyan Sea, on a deserted island. Sikong Yi and Bai Li Chen cautiously surveyed their surroundings. After confirming that no one had followed them, they finally entered their hidden cave abode, which they had carefully constructed. The interior was small and quite simple. Despite this, Sikong Yi felt unusually secure inside. Bai Li Chen's clone stood at the entrance, vigilantly on guard. Meanwhile, Sikong Yi himself relaxed completely, lying on the bed and contemplating his future plans. If my guess is correct, the strange phenomenon at the center of Kangyan Sea should be the precursor to the appearance of the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace. And the Cloud-Water Atlas should be located in these ruins. 100,000 contribution points. Sikong Yi's eyes glimmered with a hint of desire. However, a moment later, hesitation clouded his expression. The Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace likely still has descendants in the world. If I impersonate a disciple and am discovered. Just thinking about this made Sikong Yi feel uneasy. Recently, while his clone was practicing the sea-stabilizing divine sword technique, it had unexpectedly sensed that someone else in Kangyan Sea was also cultivating the same technique. This was surprising, as he had obtained this golden core technique from the remains of a Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace disciple many years ago. By all rights, no one else should know of it. And yet, here it was. His first reaction was that there must still be descendants of the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace alive. He had originally intended to investigate further, but the closer he got to the target location, the stronger the feeling of dread became. If he had gone, he would have been walking into certain death. Realizing this, Sikong Yi fled immediately in fear. After narrowly escaping, he found himself unable to eat or sleep peacefully, constantly worried that the person who shared his technique would track him down. The golden core technique may be precious, but compared to my life, it's not worth the risk. After much hesitation, he decided to temporarily suppress the sea-stabilizing divine sword technique, leaving only his pure cultivation power in his dantian. As a result, the strength of his clone significantly weakened. During this time, he acted with extreme caution, rarely leaving the safety of either the Tianquan mirror or this secret cave abode. But now, as the day of the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace's opening approached, his thoughts began to stir again. 100,000 contribution points, 100,000 contribution points. He muttered under his breath, a decisive glint flashing in his eyes. That old turtle Tai is not in his right mind. I'll hurry to him first, then recultivate the sea-stabilizing divine sword, disguise myself as a Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace disciple, and steal the Cloud-Water Atlas. Once I leave the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace, I'll quickly disperse my cultivation and head to the Tianquan mirror to claim my reward. By the time that descendant realizes something's wrong, it will be too late to find me. All I need to do is be faster than them. Fortune favors the bold. Having made up his mind, Sikong Yi let out a long breath and was just about to take a well-deserved rest before his adventure when he suddenly noticed movement at the entrance of the cave. His face changed dramatically, and he quickly got up, rushing to the entrance, where he and his clone stood on high alert. Is Taoist Bai Li present? The voice caused Sikong Yi's heart to leap into his throat. Who is it? How do they know my identity? And how do they know about this cave abode? A flurry of faces flashed through his mind, but he quickly dismissed each one. Narrowing his eyes, neither Sikong Yi nor Bai Li Chen responded. Instead, they took out their magical artifacts from their storage rings, secretly gathering their strength. Seeing no reply, the voice outside spoke again. Hee, Taoist Bai Li, there's no need to worry. I mean no harm. I've come uninvited this time simply for the 100,000 contribution points related to the Cloud-Water Atlas. Sikong Yi was shaken to the core by these words. His hands trembled, nearly dropping his magical artifact. His expression fluctuated wildly, and after thinking it over for a long time, he finally spoke. He controlled his clone to ask in a hoarse voice, "What do you mean?" The person outside chuckled. Taoist Bai Li, you don't need to play dumb. Did you really think that no one else besides you knows the origins of the sea-stabilizing divine sword? Realizing that the person wasn't bluffing, Sikong Yi fell silent for a long while before speaking in a low voice. What do you want? What do I want? That's a funny way to put it. The voice outside laughed. Naturally, I want a share of the profits. Who wouldn't be tempted by 100,000 contribution points? Now that he knew the other person's intentions, Sikong Yi actually felt somewhat relieved. After pondering it for a while, he finally disabled the entrance's restrictions and, with his clone at his back, stepped out cautiously. Outside the cave stood a plain-looking middle-aged cultivator with a thin face and a small goatee. "There's no need to be so tense. I mean no harm. I am Han Wuyu," the middle-aged cultivator said, cupping his hands with a faint smile. "Say what you came here for." Sikong Yi was no longer as tense upon seeing that the man only had qi condensation cultivation. After some back and forth, Sikong Yi learned the truth of the situation. It turned out that Han Wuyu had accidentally witnessed the battle in which Sikong Yi's clone had used the stabilizing divine sword. Although Han Wuyu's cultivation wasn't high, he was well read and had recognized the technique as originating from the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace. Recently, the strange phenomena at the center of Kongyunsi had caught his attention as well. After observing the scene briefly, he speculated that the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace was about to reappear. He connected this to the mission offering 100,000 contribution points and deduced that Bai Li Chen, having inherited the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace's legacy, was certain to acquire the Cloud-Water Atlas. This was why he had followed them secretly and came to visit. "Getting the Cloud-Water Atlas is my own skill. Why should I share the profits with you?" Sikong Yi said angrily. "Hee, Taoist, you're joking. You wouldn't want news of your obtaining the legacy of an ancient sect to spread across Kongyunsi, would you?" Han Wuyu stroked his goatee, his eyes flashing with a cold gleam. Killing intent rose in Sikong Yi's heart, but before he could act, Han Wuyu continued, "But I don't intend to take your benefits for nothing. You have your path to wealth, and I have my way to the heavens. If you're willing to share some of the 100,000 contribution points with me, I also have a good opportunity to offer you. With the three of us working together, 100,000 contribution points will just be the beginning." Sikong Yi's interest was piqued. "Explain yourself clearly." Han Wuyu smiled slightly and said, "Even if we earn 100,000 contribution points, we're still small fish. We would burn through it quickly. Isn't that true?" Sikong Yi thought for a moment, then nodded. The speed at which qi condensation cultivators can earn contribution points is indeed slow. "But once I break through to Foundation Establishment." Han Wuyu waved a hand dismissively. "So what if you reach Foundation Establishment? Are there few Foundation Establishment cultivators in Kongyunsi? Aren't they all still struggling for those meager contribution points? Even for a Foundation Establishment cultivator, earning 100,000 contribution points would take 10 or 20 years, even without eating or drinking." "Then what brilliant plan do you have?" Sikong Yi asked skeptically. Han Wuyu raised his head proudly. "Have you ever heard of Master Li Fan?" Sikong Yi's body shook as he exclaimed, "You mean, the ancient heavenly mechanism sect cultivator, the one renowned for his divination skills and wealth, rivaling nations?" Han Wuyu nodded, a hint of pride in his voice. "Indeed, I am acquainted with Master Li's." He paused for effect, then added, "Friend, Senior He Zhenghao." Chapter 484. Sikong Yi skeptically eyed Han Wuyu, his face full of disbelief. "I've heard of He Zhenghao. Nowadays, he's quite a prominent figure in the Kongyunsi. You're just at the qi condensation stage, how could you have any connection with him?" Han Wuyu stroked his goatee with pride and said, "My methods are far beyond what you can imagine, Taoist friend. How exactly I accomplished it is not convenient to explain, but there's no need for you to doubt its authenticity." Seeing that Bai Li Chen and Sikong Yi still appeared unconvinced, Han Wuyu sneered, "Well, I knew you wouldn't believe me so easily." With that, he tossed over a communication talisman. "This is a communication talisman from Senior He Zhenghao. You can try it yourself and see if I'm exaggerating." Sikong Yi held the talisman with a solemn expression and gently sensed it. Sure enough, it displayed the image of He Zhenghao. He tried sending a greeting, but unfortunately, Senior He Zhenghao seemed busy and only responded with an automated reply. Even so, it confirmed that Han Wuyu wasn't lying. Han Wuyu retrieved the talisman and continued his persuasive speech, "The 100,000 contribution points in your hands will be squandered in no time. How much will be left after 1 year? 2 years? 3 years? But if entrusted to Senior He Zhenghao, who will pass them to Master Li Fan, it will be a different story. Perhaps you're unaware, but investments handled by Master Li Fan yield at least a 50% return annually." Sikong Yi's breath caught. Bai Li Chen's clone couldn't help but exclaim, 50% annual return. How is that possible? He quickly calculated, doing nothing would earn at least 50,000 points in profit annually. And if the profits are reinvested with Master Li, in just 6 years, 100,000 contribution points will grow to 1 million. Contribution points. Hiss. 1 million contribution points. The thought of such a vast number made Sikong feel dizzy. At one time, he believed that 100,000 contribution points would be the ultimate goal of his life. Who could have imagined that he might one day possess 1 million? Once the desire took root, it became impossible to suppress. Although logic told him such explosive returns were highly unrealistic, the many tales of Master Li fans' feats across the cultivation world weren't fabrications. Master Li was currently at a level that Sikong could not even hope to reach. Who's to say that such incredible abilities weren't real? Sikong heart was stirred. Han Wuyu, noticing the expression on Sikong face, knew he had won him over. Taoist Han, please come in and explain the details. Sikong invited Han Wuyu into his cave abode, eager to inquire about the specifics of the investment. As Han Wuyu explained, Sikong listened with increasing excitement, regretting that he hadn't met Han Wuyu earlier, lamenting the missed opportunities for wealth. Although I'm eager to immediately hand over the 100,000 contribution points to Master Li for investment, it's still premature. After a moment of contemplation, Bai Li Chen sighed, the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace relic has been sealed for thousands of years. The dangers within must be unimaginable. I'm not confident I can successfully retrieve the Cloudwater Atlas. Moreover, after hesitating for a while, Bai Li Chen decided to tell the truth. I fear there may still be descendants of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace in the world. Han Wuyu's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Is that true? Bai Li Chen then explained what he had sensed while cultivating the sea-stabilizing divine sword. Han Wuyu pondered for a moment before slowly saying, in my opinion, the person may not necessarily be a descendant of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. It's quite possible they stumbled upon this technique by chance from some relic. Bai Li Chen smiled bitterly, even if that's the case, it can't be proven. To be honest, Taoist Han, I didn't even dare approach the island. Han Wuyu paced back and forth, seemingly deep in thought. After a long pause, he spoke, if you trust me, Taoist, point me to the location of the island. I will take care of this matter for you. However, if I succeed, I want 40% of the 100,000 contribution points. Sikong and Bai Li Chen both looked up sharply, staring at Han Wuyu. After a while, Bai Li Chen said in a deep voice, if you can truly eliminate that cultivator of the sea-stabilizing divine sword, then what's the harm in giving you 40%? Deal. Afterward, Sikong took Han Wuyu to the vicinity of the island. What do you think? There's indeed a dangerous aura lurking on the island. After observing for a while from afar, Han Wuyu frowned. However, Han Wuyu's tone suddenly changed, it's not a big problem. Sikong was surprised. Han Wuyu coldly remarked, in today's cultivation world, the lives of cultivators may not be as valuable as you think. Taoist, return to your cave and await my good news. With that, Han Wuyu cupped his hands and departed swiftly. Sikong watched him leave, his expression unreadable. Instead of returning to his cave, he hid near the island, waiting in ambush. 3 days later, a shadow moved swiftly toward the island. Simultaneously, a cultivator flew out from the island to confront the figure. After a brief standoff, they engaged in an intense battle. The terrifying power of the fight stunned Sikong, who was observing from the shadows. Han Wuyu really has some skill. Judging by this level of power, at least a nascent soul stage cultivator is involved. Sikong's excitement grew. After watching for a while, he feared being discovered by the powerful combatants and quietly left, returning to his cave. 2 days later, Han Wuyu visited again. Taoist Bai Li, you can resume cultivating the sea-stabilizing divine sword now. Han Wuyu declared proudly. I spent a fortune enlisting a senior to handle this matter. Don't let me down during the expedition to Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. Han Wuyu's tone was full of meaning. Bai Li Chen, thrilled, immediately began cultivating again. His foundation from the Taisheng Primordial Sutra was still intact, and within half a day, he had returned to his pre-scattering state. After sensing his surroundings, he found that the other cultivator who practiced the same technique had indeed disappeared. Taoist Han, you truly have impressive methods. Sikong was overjoyed and grew even more convinced of Han Wuyu's abilities. Han Wuyu stroked his goatee with satisfaction and said, in today's cultivation world, brute strength alone won't get you far. You need connections and backing. Sikong nodded repeatedly in agreement. The three of them carefully discussed the plan, and as the day of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace's opening drew closer, their preparations were complete. Together, they set off for the center of the Kangyun Sea. By then, many cultivators had already gathered outside the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, eager to witness the event. Chapter 485. With fellow Taoist Bai Li here, those cultivators are bound to have come all this way for nothing. Han Wuyu swept his gaze around and said with a smile. You can't say that for sure. Apart from the Cloudwater Talisman, there must be other opportunities within the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. Sikong Yi remained calm, staring straight at the increasingly spectacular phenomenon in the sky. No matter how great the opportunity, it can't compare to the Cloudwater Atlas. Han Wuyu shook his head. Sikong Yi was a bit surprised. Why do you say that? Hey, people are only focused on the 100,000 contribution points, blinded by it. They've overlooked the true opportunity. Han Wuyu smiled faintly. What's the most important thing in cultivation? Background. Connections. He repeated. In my view, the true value of the Cloudwater Atlas lies in the chance to establish a connection with the senior who issued the mission. To be able to offer a reward of 100,000 contribution points so casually, this person must be at least at the soul transformation stage. Even just having a conversation with him would be hugely different for an ordinary cultivator. Han Wuyu explained softly. If one could obtain a stable way to contact him, it could completely change their fate. Sikong Yi, hearing this, seemed lost in thought. After a while, he nodded slowly. While the three of them were chatting, a blue light swept across the Kangyun Sea, signaling the official opening of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. Sikong Yi, Bai Li Chen, and Han Wuyu followed the crowd of cultivators and flew inside. After overcoming several obstacles, they passed the test set by the Qin Hall without much trouble. However, during their journey deeper inside, for some unknown reason, the three of them caught the attention of another group of cultivators. In the ensuing chaos, they ended up fighting. The opponents were numerous and overall stronger. In the end, Han Wuyu fell under their siege, dying with his eyes wide open in disbelief. Sikong Yi, relying on the powerful life-saving abilities of the stealing the sky and changing the sun technique, managed to survive by a stroke of luck. Barely escaping, he headed towards the location of the Tai Hall, feeling utterly cold inside. Such is the unpredictability of life. Someone like fellow Taoist Han, with such promising prospects, died so inexplicably here. Recalling Han Wuyu's confident demeanor from not long ago, Sikong Yi felt a sense of loss. Though they hadn't known each other long, Sikong Yi had already regarded him as a close friend. Alas, the heavens are jealous of outstanding talents. Sikong Yi subconsciously touched a storage ring in his hand. It was something he had snatched from Han Wuyu's body when he saw him beheaded. Han Wuyu was indeed wealthy, as the ring was filled with various formation diagrams and magical artifacts. There were also about 10,000 spirit stones worth of contribution points, and most importantly, dozens of communication talismans. Connections, background. Sikong Yi kept repeating these words in his mind as the sadness in his eyes gradually faded. Fellow Taoist Han, rest assured. I will live well on your behalf. With Han Wuyu's death as a sacrifice, the subsequent events unfolded much more smoothly. After passing the insect Taoist's test and enduring the excruciating pain of being pierced by 10,000 swords, Sikong Yi reached the square in front of the Tai Hall. At that moment, there was only silence around him. He was the only one present. Suppressing his excitement, Sikong Yi controlled his doppelganger and activated the Sea-stabilizing divine sword. Direct disciple of the 165th generation of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, Bai Li Chen, requests an audience with Patriarch Tai. He shouted loudly. The ground trembled, and he finally succeeded in tricking the half-conscious tortoise snake monster into giving him the Cloudwater Atlas. After requesting to be teleported out of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, Sikong Yi maintained a composed expression and headed straight for the 10,000 Immortals Island. With a series of narrow escapes, he successfully returned to the Tianquan Mirror. The clone, Bai Li Chen, chose to submit the mission. Unable to verify the authenticity of the Cloudwater Atlas. Please wait. The Tianquan Mirror's response made Sikong Yi's heart skip a beat. Even the Tianquan Mirror can't verify it. Besides the miniature landscape, what else is the Cloudwater Atlas used for? Sikong Yi didn't have time to ponder further, as the next message from the Tianquan Mirror shook him to his core. The task issuer requests to visit your space. Do you accept? It's here. It's happening. Sikong Yi was stunned for a moment, then his heart started pounding violently. His blood boiled, and Han Wuyu's words resurfaced in his mind. The real opportunity is in connections. His mind raced with countless thoughts. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Sikong Yi said in a low voice, "I accept." Moments later, an elderly man with graying hair and a kind face appeared before him. Sikong Yi bent over respectfully, nervously handing over the 7-colored model with trembling hands. The elder took the cloud water atlas, observing it closely, and sighed deeply. His cloudy eyes kept shifting, as if recalling something. "What is the current state of the cloud water heavenly palace?" he asked. Sikong Yi swallowed, stammering as he answered. The elder, seemingly unbothered by Sikong Yi's nervousness, occasionally nodded as he listened to the description. After Sikong Yi finished speaking, the space within the Tianshuan mirror fell into a long silence once more. Looking at the still, contemplative elder before him, Han Wuyu's words echoed again in Sikong Yi's mind. In today's cultivation world, mere bravery and combat prowess are useless. You need background, you need connections. His heart beat faster and faster until he couldn't hold back any longer. Summoning his courage, he asked, "Senior, is there anything else I can do to serve you?" The heavenly doctor looked up, glancing at Sikong Yi. Sikong Yi felt as if his heart was suddenly gripped tightly, halting its beat. His entire body seemed to freeze, his mind ceasing to function. He didn't know how long it took before he heard a soft laugh from the other party. "Very well, I do have one more task for you. Go to the Cloud Water Heavenly Palace again and place this item there." As he spoke, the elder took out a small white jade statue and handed it to Sikong Yi. Hearing this, Sikong Yi was ecstatic inside. But he dared not show any excitement on his face, carefully taking the statue. Upon closer inspection, the white jade statue didn't seem to have anything special, except that it looked exactly like the elder before him. "I will not fail your trust, Senior." Sikong Yi took the statue and said solemnly. As for the reward, the elder stared at Sikong Yi for a while before speaking slowly, "Another 100,000 contribution points will do." With that, Sikong Yi received a notification of 200,000 contribution points being credited to his account. Sikong Yi's mind went blank. It was only long after the elder's figure had disappeared from the Tianshuan mirror that he regained his thoughts. Just a simple errand, and another 100,000 contribution points. This senior is probably far beyond the soul transformation stage. Opportunity, true opportunity. If I relied solely on myself, who knows how long it would take to accumulate 100,000 contribution points. Now, a few words from an influential figure, and they're mine for the taking. Fellow Taoist Han didn't deceive me. With his heart surging, Sikong Yi seemed to glimpse a bright future ahead and couldn't help but let out a long, loud laugh. After calming down, he didn't dare neglect the old man's instructions. He immediately headed back to the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. The statue in his storage ring emitted a burst of white light, flying straight into the sky. It dissolved and disappeared. With the task completed, Sikong Yi exhaled a long breath of relief and quietly left, seeing no one around. Shortly after, outside the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, a hidden figure slowly appeared. It was Li Fan, Heavenly Doctor, HMPH. Watching Sikong Yi's departing figure, he sneered inwardly. Chapter 486. Previously, the Han Wuyu, who visited Sikong Yi was, of course, a clone of Li Fan. After considerable effort, pretending to demand 40% of the contribution, helping resolve the cultivation technique issue for the fellow cultivator, and strategizing together to explore the Yunshui Celestial Palace, the ultimate goal was to implant a suggestion in his mind. This suggestion was to prompt him, after completing the first task of the Heavenly Doctor, to voluntarily trigger the mission to transport the white jade statue. Judging by Sikong Yi's recent actions of shuttling back and forth to the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, it appears that Li Fan's scheme has succeeded. In this life, he intends to push for a battle between Old Fisherman, Sage, and the Heavenly Doctor. But all his plans have a major premise. Someone needs to deliver the statue of the Heavenly Doctor into the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. Only then would the sage sense the presence of the Heavenly Doctor within the palace and drive his ox cart across the sea. Such a dangerous mission was certainly not something Li Fan would undertake personally. The 4 techniques of observation, listening, inquiry, and pulse-taking of the Heavenly Doctor were truly terrifying. Even a prepared clone might not be able to deceive the Heavenly Doctor. The previous handover of the Cloud Water Atlas and gaining 100,000 contribution points made Sikong Yi the ideal candidate for the task. However, Li Fan wasn't certain if Sikong Yi had received the same request from the Heavenly Doctor to help transport the statue. To ensure the plan proceeded as intended, the visit of Han Wuyu took place. Even if Sikong Yi or the Heavenly Doctor suspected this mysterious Han Wuyu was already dead. He died within the eerie Cloud Water Heavenly Palace. Li Fan believed that even for the Heavenly Doctor, tracking this matter might not be straightforward. Besides, in the eyes of the Heavenly Doctor, Sikong Yi would at most be a greedy cultivator, blinded by profit and eager to latch onto a powerful figure. He might not even be inclined to investigate further. Overall, Li Fan's plan was flawless, leaving no trace and eliminating the possibility of being discovered. It was a perfect scheme. This was the result of multiple reincarnations, experiencing various possibilities, and mastering a wealth of information. Others could not replicate it. Even a strong figure like the Heavenly Doctor had unknowingly fallen into the invisible web Li Fan had woven. Although the impact was minor, the very act of manipulating an expert even stronger than Dao integration to act according to one's own expectations was significant in itself. The gloom in Li Fan's heart was completely dispelled, and the long-standing shadow that had been weighing on him finally began to dissipate. No matter how powerful you are, you're still under my control. Despite his excitement, Li Fan didn't let this small victory go to his head. He deeply understood that this minor success was built on the premise of collecting enough possibilities. Moving forward, his advantage had been exhausted. What he faced next were unknown variables, requiring him to tread cautiously and carefully. It's better to abandon than to force. The Heavenly Doctor is already in place. The next step is to inform Old Fisherman of the Heavenly Fiend's sword being trapped in the Cloud Water Heavenly Palace during the 16th year, when the sage reappears in the world. This, too, needs an agent. In an instant, Li Fan had thought of a suitable candidate. Han Yi. Sensing the locking force of the formless killing intent, it had been more than a year since Han Yi had returned to the Xuanwang realm from the sea swirl. It seems his adventures have yielded substantial gains this time. No worries, he won't escape my grasp. Li Fan gazed for a moment at the towering Cloud Water Heavenly Palace in the sky, then collected his thoughts and quietly returned. Shenhua Island. Yi Feipeng had been feeling quite pleased recently. The Immortal Master, who had brought them to this island and then ignored them for a long time, suddenly reappeared. Moreover, he even checked the cultivation progress of the children on the island. Those who cultivated diligently and made unexpected progress were rewarded with spirit stones and elixirs. Those who were lazy or stagnant in their cultivation were punished by having to fight the evil puppet for 3 days and 3 nights. Although it was called a fight, it was actually a one-sided beating. The evil puppet was what the children privately called the puppet that looked dull and foolish. Initially, they thought the puppet would be easy to handle. After cultivating for a while, some children became eager to challenge it. The first one to step forward was Sun Erlang, who was naturally talented and proficient in martial arts. Within half a year, he had advanced from an ordinary person to the mid-stage of Qi condensation. Coupled with his martial prowess, he could exert double his combat power. In their usual sparring sessions, almost no one on the island could last a single round against him. Gradually, his confidence swelled, and in front of everyone, he was the first to challenge the Tianyang puppet. The result was predictable. Tianyang, following Li Fan's instructions, beat him senseless without causing fatal injuries or harming his cultivation foundation. While being extremely precise in his attacks, he made Sun Erlang truly understand what it meant to be deceived and outmatched. It seemed that Tianyang was just slightly stronger than Sun Erlang, and that with a little more effort, he could be defeated. Tianyang continuously lured Sun Erlang into attacking again and again. But every time, at the critical moment, Sun Erlang failed. With a strong desire to win, Sun Erlang fought until he was exhausted and passed out before the fight ended. The next day, after waking up, Sun Erlang had an epiphany. He went into seclusion for 7 days and nights, and actually broke through to the late stage of Qi condensation. Overjoyed, he decided to regain his dignity and challenge Tianyang again. The result, he still lost by just a little. The children on the island all noticed something was off. This seemingly honest and simple puppet was actually toying with them. Angry, Sun Erlang fainted again from the beating. In the following days, no matter what level of cultivation the children displayed in their fights against Tianyang, the puppet only used slightly superior strength. Some children, unable to accept it, called Tianyang a big villain. Others gradually realized that Tianyang was the perfect sparring partner. They began seeking him out for continuous battles. Yi Feipeng was naturally one of them. In truth, fighting wasn't his preference, but as the only one on the island practicing 3 methods simultaneously, he couldn't allow himself to be weaker than others. Unfortunately, his talent wasn't top-notch. Initially, he could rely on his dual cultivation of physical and spiritual powers to gain an advantage. But as others' realms gradually increased, Yi Feipeng's performance in fights against Tianyang also lagged behind. Just as he was becoming anxious, the Immortal Master appeared. While being strict with rewards and punishments, he gave Yi Feipeng special attention. After examining his cultivation progress and conducting a comprehensive check on his body, the Immortal Master concluded that the sea-stabilizing sword he was practicing might not be suitable. So, he removed his cultivation and taught him a new technique called the Sea Dragon Wandering Technique. Chapter 487. Cultivating the Sea Dragon Wandering Technique proved to be much smoother for Yi Feipeng than practicing the sea-stabilizing divine sword. On the second day of switching cultivation techniques, he successfully broke through to the mid-stage of chi condensation. Moreover, the elixir provided by the Immortal Master helped him unlock a sliver of hidden power within his body. After strengthening his physical body, even Sun Erlang, who was at the late stage of chi condensation, was no match for Yi Feipeng in actual combat. Having solidified his position as the leader of the children on the island, Yi Feipeng finally felt somewhat relieved. At the same time, he understood a crucial lesson. To cultivate faster, aside from one's own talent and hard work, it was even more important to please the Immortal Master. From the Immortal Master's casual words, Yi Feipeng learned that the Immortal Master seemed to place great importance on the refining progress of the Beast God Bead. Thus, in addition to his cultivation, Yi Feipeng never forgot to keep the Beast God Bead with him at all times, carefully comprehending its mysteries. One day, after falling into a deep sleep while holding the Beast God Bead, he seemed to have a dream. In the dream, he saw a terrifying 9-headed bird suspended above the sky. Its colossal body nearly filled the entire sky. Each of its 9 heads was devouring something. With Yi Feipeng's current knowledge, he recognized struggling and twisted dragon limbs, an entire intact mountain range, and branches of a giant, ash-gray tree. All around, there were despairing and painful wails, and the world was bathed in blood. Yi Feipeng's young mind was deeply shocked by this doomsday-like scene. He stood there dumbfounded, unable to move. At that moment, one of the 9-headed bird's heads seemed to notice his presence. Its eyes slightly moved, casting a gaze upon him as if looking at food. Terrified by being stared at by this fierce beast, fear instantly overwhelmed Yi Feipeng's mind. Under the shadow of the 9-headed bird, it seemed that in the next moment, he would be swallowed whole. Just then, a loud and distant cry echoed in his ears. It seemed to come from the deep sea, yet also from the sky. The cry was full of defiance and anger. With his eyes turning blood red, Yi Feipeng's previously frozen body immediately returned to normal. Attracted by this inexplicable cry, the 9 heads in the sky simultaneously turned towards the source. Yi Feipeng woke up from his nightmare. Panting heavily, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and recalled the scenes he had seen in his dream. That 9-headed bird must be the mythical beast sealed within the Beast God Bead. But what was that cry I heard afterwards? Yi Feipeng's little face was filled with confusion. However, he knew very well that anything that could catch the attention of the 9-headed bird was definitely not ordinary. Without mentioning it to anyone else, Yi Feipeng firmly kept this matter in his heart. In the following days, Yi Feipeng found that his cultivation of the creation furnace technique became much more effortless. The hidden power within his body that used to require cautious effort to tap into was now easily accessible. He could even ignore some side effects, like dizziness or surging blood, that he previously had to be wary of. His physical strength was increasing at a frightening pace that even he found alarming, filling his heart with both secret joy and a touch of fear of the unknown. Therefore, in sparring with his companions, he never used his full strength. Like the Tianyang puppet, he only defeated his opponents just enough each time. And so, more time passed. One day, the Immortal Master visited the island again. As usual, he inspected everyone's cultivation progress. After regarding Xiao Heng, who had been particularly lazy, as an example and scolding him severely, the Immortal Master brought Yi Feipeng to a secret chamber alone for a closer look. During the long silence, Yi Feipeng felt somewhat nervous. In the end, he couldn't hold back and told the Immortal Master about the dream he had and the changes in his body recently. After a moment of contemplation, the Immortal Master decided to perform a comprehensive examination on him. Thus, Yi Feipeng fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he felt slightly weakened. The Immortal Master, with great concern, handed him another elixir. After swallowing it, Yi Feipeng immediately felt much more energetic. You were too impatient, and in your haste, you were contaminated by the violent energy of the nine-headed bird, the Immortal Master said in his cold voice. Yi Feipeng was startled, but hearing the Immortal Master's next words, he felt a bit relieved. Rest assured, I have already expelled it from your body. Thank you, Immortal Master, Yi Feipeng said gratefully. The Immortal Master waved his hand. Although you were reckless, you've benefited from this misfortune and even awakened a trace of your ancestral bloodline. Ancestral bloodline, Yi Feipeng was both surprised and delighted. Indeed, have you ever heard of the ancient mythical beast, Kunpeng? As he spoke, the Immortal Master pointed forward. A massive beast, sometimes appearing as a bird, other times as a fish, appeared in the air. After explaining the power of this Kunpeng beast to Yi Feipeng, the Immortal Master sighed with emotion. I didn't expect you to have such a power of an ancient fierce beast in your bloodline. If you can harness this power, your cultivation speed will surpass even those so-called prodigies. Seeing the look on Yi Feipeng's face, the Immortal Master added, however, everything has its pros and cons. Advancing too quickly could also impact your state of mind. If you can't control it, it might bring you disaster instead of fortune. Yi Feipeng quickly promised, Immortal Master, rest assured, I will certainly remember your teachings. I will not become arrogant or impatient, and I will cultivate diligently, step by step. The Immortal Master nodded slowly, seemingly satisfied with his response. After receiving a storage ring filled with spirit stones and magical artifacts as a reward, Yi Feipeng left, overjoyed. Watching Yi Feipeng's jubilant figure as he left, Li Fan revealed a smile that was neither genuine nor fake. I didn't expect this kid's awakening of the Kunpeng bloodline in this lifetime to be even faster than I anticipated. The nine-headed divine bird, huh? Li Fan stretched out his right hand. A wisp of blood-red murderous aura coiled around his fingertips, lingering for a long time. If you listened carefully, faint cries and wails could be heard coming from it. Li Fan absorbed the red aura and closed his eyes to carefully comprehend it. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. In that instant, a strange red light flashed in his pupils. Li Fan looked at the stone stool in the chamber. In just a moment, the originally hard stone surface turned pitch black under Li Fan's gaze. It seems that the nine-headed bird's beast soul bead released this unique murderous aura due to the influence of the Kunpeng bloodline. It appears to be the power of the nine-headed bird's innate divine ability. Unfortunately, the murderous aura is too weak to grasp more than this. The strange red light in his eyes faded, and Li Fan felt a tinge of regret. Although the beast power cannot be used because of senior brother Zhang's grand aspiration Dharma body, there are still things to learn from it. The divine abilities of mythical beasts may be harnessed by cultivators. All paths originate from the same source, different routes lead to the same destination. Like Han Yi's technique of controlling fate, which seems to be derived from the heavenly fate mystic bird. Li Fan pondered silently. Chapter 488. Li Fan has undergone 100 reincarnations, mastering extraordinary divine abilities beyond the imagination of ordinary cultivators. The Chaos Sutra, Silent Annihilation Sword, Sky Flipping Palm, Cloud Cluster Sword. Each one of these techniques has the power to slay enemies far above his own level. Ordinary demonic beasts' divine abilities did not interest Li Fan, but this nine-headed bird was clearly an exception. Li Fan had a hunch that the grade of this fierce nine-headed bird might even surpass that of Kunpeng. Let's see what surprises Yi Feipeng can bring me. After testing the malevolent aura of the nine-headed bird, he took out a mass of Kunpeng blood essence from his storage ring. Every so often, he would extract a wisp from Yi Feipeng's body to use for enlightenment. By now, Li Fan's research into Kunpeng's power had achieved initial success. When he operated the creation furnace technique, he still appeared human, but his stomach quietly transformed into the structure of a Kunpeng beast. Sensing the miraculous use of his newly formed Kunpeng stomach for a moment, Li Fan smiled and took out several high-grade spirit stones worth 100 contribution points each and swallowed them. Almost instantly, the highly concentrated spiritual energy in the spirit stones was absorbed and consumed by Li Fan. Compared to the methods of ordinary cultivators, the efficiency was several times higher. Although not as extreme as the heaven-devouring and earth-eating technique, it was still extremely astonishing. No wonder Yi Feipeng's cultivation speed accelerated in the previous life. With such a unique ability, it's truly remarkable. As the mountain-sitting technique circulated, and all the spiritual energy was converted into his own spiritual power, Li Fan took out a pile of supreme-grade spirit stones to test the current limit of his Kun Devour divine ability. One stone was worth 1,000 contribution points, and this pile alone amounted to 50 or 60,000. Without hesitation, Li Fan devoured them all. The spirit stones vanished into his belly like a river flowing into the sea. Boom! A pure stream of spiritual energy erupted from within his stomach. Li Fan's expression changed slightly as he desperately tried to circulate his technique to consume it. But the spiritual energy flow was like a torrential flood, surging endlessly. Li Fan's attempts to consume it were like trying to quench a blazing cartload of firewood with a cup of water. Fortunately, practicing the creation furnace technique had strengthened Li Fan's physique to some extent, so his meridians weren't damaged by the overwhelming spiritual energy. However, letting it run rampant inside his body wasn't a viable solution either. To avoid drawing attention, Li Fan's clone approached Tianyang and converted the nearly uncontrollable spiritual energy into blue cloud cluster swords, slashing towards the puppet's body. After several slashes, the rampaging spiritual energy was finally exhausted and gradually subsided. However, the seemingly powerful sword light didn't leave even the slightest trace on Tianyang's body. Tianyang tilted his head, looking somewhat puzzled at his senior brother, thinking Li Fan wanted to spar with him. He raised his fist. Hee, junior brother, don't misunderstand. I just made a mistake during my cultivation, Li Fan said with a smile, stopping Tianyang. Tianyang then showed a worried expression. After comforting Tianyang for a while, Li Fan returned to the secret chamber. Although I've simulated the Kunpeng stomach, achieving such astonishing devouring speed, a human body cannot be compared to ancient demonic beasts. I still can't convert the absorbed energy into a powerful resource for myself in time. However, if I corroborate it with the heaven-devouring and earth-eating technique. Li Fan narrowed his eyes and came up with an idea. Improving techniques isn't something that can be done overnight. After splitting a part of his consciousness with the Hua Dao divine technique of transformation to focus on this matter, Li Fan tried the Peng Flight divine ability again. This time, there were no abnormal bone wings sprouting from his back. Instead, he constantly flickered and maneuvered within the small space of the secret chamber. His speed increased, almost becoming a blur in the air, beyond what the naked eye could perceive. After a while, Li Fan finally stopped the experiment, satisfied. Good. The method of Peng Flight combined with the incomplete Purple Heaven Divine Thunder escape, has increased my escape speed by more than double. In the future, as my research into Kunpeng blood essence deepens, it will become even faster. Next, Li Fan didn't try the divine ability of Jing Peng transformation. This kind of divine ability, which completely transforms into the form of a demonic beast, was something Li Fan still chose to avoid. Although its power was formidable, if it accidentally triggered senior brother Zhang's grand aspirations Dharma incarnation, it would be a disaster. In fact, among the many divine abilities displayed by Yi Feipeng in his previous life, the one Li Fan was most concerned with was the so-called bloodline crossing. Judging from Yi Feipeng's later behavior, this bloodline crossing could not only change a person's physique, slowly transforming them into a pure demonic beast but also unconsciously alter their mind. Yi Feipeng's transformation from demonic beast to holy beast clearly illustrated this point. It's not hard to imagine that if Yi Feipeng, influenced by Kunpeng essence blood, encountered the Kunpeng itself, he would definitely exhibit loyalty, stemming from the depths of his bloodline. What Li Fan currently lacked was this method of controlling people. Now, he was merely using foreknowledge and coercion to force or entice people to his side. Although effective, there were bound to be failures occasionally. It wasn't as reliable and reassuring as this kind of secret technique. Bloodline crossing might require Yi Feipeng's Kunpeng bloodline to become even purer before I can comprehend it. It's time to purchase more pills to replenish blood and energy. After handing over the remaining pills and the task of regular blood extractions to Tianyang, Li Fan leisurely returned to 10,000 Immortal Island. Instead of going back to the Tianshuan Mirror, he headed straight to the Qinli Hall. Nearly 2 years had passed, and there was still no response from Zhao Shuyuan regarding the task he had assigned him to unearth the small king of medicine cauldron. Li Fan found it strange and decided to visit personally. Zhao Shuyuan was slightly taken aback upon seeing Li Fan suddenly appear. His eyes flickered, and his expression showed a bit of awkwardness. "Fellow Taoist Zhao, have you forgotten something?" Li Fan asked. Zhao Shuyuan chuckled and hurriedly pulled out a chair from somewhere, inviting Li Fan to sit down. "What's going on?" Seeing Zhao Shuyuan's demeanor, Li Fan already had an idea. Not in a hurry, he just stared at Zhao Shuyuan for a long time before speaking again. Zhao Shuyuan, feeling uncomfortable under Li Fan's gaze, closed the store door and whispered, "It's not that I deliberately stalled you, but I'm in a difficult situation. With your abilities, fellow Taoist Zhao, is there anything in the Medicine King sect's ruins that can trouble you?" Li Fan was skeptical. After thousands of years, even if there were any restrictions, they would have failed by now. Zhao Shuyuan shook his head and said, "The problem is, someone else got there first." "Oh, what do you mean?" Li Fan's expression turned serious. Yet another unforeseen variable had appeared. Just as I was about to pinpoint the location of the small Medicine King cauldron, people from the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's Protectorate Institute suddenly showed up. Chapter 489. They sealed off the ruins, drove out the cultivators inside, and even inspected their storage rings. "It's as if there's some incredible treasure hidden in there." Zhao Shuyuan's eyes gleamed as he whispered. "Although I'm not afraid of them, harmony brings wealth, so I didn't start any conflict and obediently left." Upon hearing this, Li Fan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The Protectorate Institute, as an elite armed organization that only operates in a few states within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's core territory, it's truly unusual for them to seal off and excavate the ruins of the Medicine King sect. Could it be that the phrase I mentioned back then, the Tianshuan Lot Union of Xuanwang Realm, has caused the cultivators of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance to compete in deducing the future, thereby foreseeing the imminent return of the true cauldron of Medicine King to the Xuanwang Realm? What do you think, fellow Taoist Zhao? Does this have anything to do with my earlier prediction and the possible opportunity related to the small Medicine King cauldron? After pondering for a moment, Li Fan looked at Zhao Shuyuan and asked. To Li Fan's surprise, Zhao Shuyuan shook his head in denial. "After returning, I made some inquiries. It's not just the ruins of the Medicine King sect. The same goes for the ruins of the Heavenly Sword sect, the Taisheng sect, and other ancient sects within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's territory. All of them have been sealed off by the Protectorate Institute cultivators. They're not allowing anyone to approach, but they themselves are vigorously searching for something inside." Zhao Shuyuan's tone was filled with some resentment. "I lost several puppets sneaking in, and discovered that they weren't so much searching for objects as they were looking for someone." "Looking for someone?" Li Fan was stunned. "How can you tell?" "All the cultivators inside the ruins are holding spirit-sensing beads. This type of artifact is extremely sensitive to the breath of life. Even if a cultivator is in deep slumber with only a sliver of life remaining, it can still detect them." Saying this, Zhao Shuyuan couldn't help but glance at Li Fan. Li Fan's expression grew thoughtful. "So, you're saying they might be searching for an ancient cultivator who, like me, fell into deep slumber thousands of years ago?" "There's a 90% chance," Zhao Shuyuan asserted. "That's quite odd." Li Fan narrowed his eyes slightly. "The 10,000 Immortal Alliance wouldn't do something meaningless. This large-scale operation clearly has a specific purpose. So, they're certain that there's such a dormant ancient cultivator, but they're unsure of their exact location. They've determined only that the person is within the ruins of various ancient sects, so they're using this needle in a haystack method to search. This person must be extremely important to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, and the reason they're looking for him is definitely related to my phrase, the Tianshuan lock." Li Fan thought for a while but couldn't figure out anything. "Fellow Taoist Zhao, you really didn't unearth a small Medicine King cauldron?" He glanced at Zhao Shuyuan and abruptly asked. Zhao Shuyuan hesitated for a moment and then chuckled awkwardly. "It seems I can't fool your discerning eyes, fellow Taoist. It's true that I didn't come away empty-handed. Unfortunately, my luck wasn't great. Just as I unearthed one, the cultivators of the Protectorate Institute showed up. And due to this incident, all the items recently excavated from sect ruins have skyrocketed in price. Quite a few cultivators have come to inquire about that small Medicine King cauldron, so." Zhao Shuyuan looked at Li Fan, his eyes practically spelling out, "higher price." However, Li Fan just waved his hand. Since this item is so sought after, let's just forget about it. You, fellow Taoist, can decide when to sell it. Without waiting for Li Fan to haggle, he directly gave up. Zhao Shuyuan was completely stunned by this response. Fellow Taoist Li, aren't you going to reconsider? A gentleman helps others achieve their goals without coveting their treasures. It's just a minor opportunity, how could I possibly be lacking? Li Fan dismissively refused, clearly uninterested. Seeing Zhao Shuyuan's dumbfounded expression, Li Fan added, instead, I'm much more interested in what you said about the 10,000 Immortal Alliance searching for an ancient cultivator. Maybe, this person is an old acquaintance of mine. I know your information network is extensive, so please investigate this matter for me. Li Fan's gaze turned sharp as he looked at Zhao Shuyuan. As for the small medicine king cauldron, forget about it. You won't keep any secrets from me about this, will you? Li Fan's gaze swept over the three characters, Qinli Hall, hanging outside the room as he spoke in an eerie tone. Rest assured, I, Zhao Shuyuan, would never ruin my own reputation. Zhao Shuyuan hurriedly promised, knowing he was in the wrong. Well then, just as Li Fan was about to nod and continue speaking, a commotion suddenly erupted outside. The two exchanged a glance, sensing that something unusual was happening, and tacitly stopped their conversation to step outside. On 10,000 Immortal Island, the towering statue of the Immortal Venerable of Tao Transmission was emitting beams of light that shot straight into the sky. The island's protective formation had been activated at some point. Beyond the protective barrier, a massive purple door stood tall. Numerous cultivators were constantly flying out of the door. The Five Elders Association, Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan exclaimed in surprise simultaneously. Are they insane? Are they declaring an all-out war against the 10,000 Immortal Alliance? Zhao Shuyuan's voice was full of shock. It was clear that this surprise attack by the Five Elders Association had been extremely secretive, catching even Zhao Shuyuan, whose ears and eyes were spread throughout the entire cultivation world, off guard. What has happened? Why has the Five Elders Association suddenly initiated a war? And the target isn't the grand cave heaven of the five elements, but instead, this 10,000 Immortal Island. Li Fan's thoughts raced. Fellow Taoist Zhao, have other cities and states been attacked by the Five Elders Association as well? After a moment, Li Fan asked in a deep voice. No, only 10,000 Immortal Island in the Kanyan Sea is the target of the Five Elders Association strike this time. After pausing for a moment, Zhao Shuyuan replied, still filled with confusion. Li Fan frowned slightly, feeling somewhat puzzled as well. The two fell silent, simply raising their heads to watch the battle in the sky. The two true monarch of the soul transformation stage on the island had been deployed to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's headquarters, leaving the island's defense forces clearly insufficient. They didn't dare engage in a direct confrontation, relying only on the formation to hold on bitterly, while hoping for reinforcements to arrive as soon as possible. But it was clear that the Five Elders Association had come well prepared. Not only had they rendered the teleportation formation useless, but even communication seemed to be blocked, making it impossible to send messages. 10,000 Immortal Island was gradually losing ground, and the faces of the many cultivators watching the battle on the island turned pale. Having lived in peace for so long, they had never seen such a scene. As time slowly passed, to everyone's surprise, when the Five Elders Association finally gained an absolute advantage and broke the protective barrier, they did not choose to attack the island directly. Instead, they began setting up a formation in the sky above 10,000 Immortal Island. Threads of light descended from the central formation above and shot towards the edges of the island. The Heaven and Earth Displacement Formation. Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan exclaimed in unison once more. As the Five Elders Association planning to move the entire 10,000 Immortal Island away? The doubt in their eyes grew stronger. The formation was completed in no time, and the threads emitted a faint white light. The ground of 10,000 Immortal Island began to shake violently. TL is the name, Immortal Venerable, good here. Because his literal translation should have been Heavenly Sovereign of Tao Transmission right pointing arrow Chuan Fa Tian Zun. The Tian Zun here is important because it's also used in later cultivation realm, which I decided to translate as Heavenly Sovereign. So, should I keep it as Immortal Venerable, as it sounds more appropriate given the character's background, or should I go with the literal term? Chapter 490. The ground trembled more and more violently, to the point where it was nearly impossible to stand. The vast 10,000 Immortal Island began to rise from the ground, slowly ascending towards the sky. Some cultivators attempted to make a desperate escape, trying to break through the encirclement. But they all met the same fate. Anyone who left the 10,000 Immortal Island was immediately pierced and killed by beams of light descending from the sky. Cries of alarm and agony from cultivators could be heard continuously. The surrounding space seemed to be completely sealed off, and even the falling images of cultivators from the sky appeared strangely distorted, layered upon one another and squeezed into one place. The fierce attacks from the Five Elders Association temporarily calmed down the cultivators who were panicking like headless flies. They realized that as long as they stayed on the 10,000 Immortal Island, the Five Elders Association seemed to have no immediate intention to attack. So, they could only tremble in fear, looking up at the purple gate that was getting closer and closer to them. Could it be that the Five Elders Association made such a grand display just to come after me? Li Fan, witnessing the scene, couldn't help but recall the earlier incident when several nascent soul cultivators came to capture him. This thought surfaced in his mind. That place is not easy to deal with. If I get captured and taken to the country of truth, where lying is impossible, wouldn't my secrets about traveling through time and the truth about my identity be completely exposed? Li Fan had a clear understanding of his current strength. He knew he was not yet capable of resisting the principles of a heavenly sovereign. Should I use the truth? A hint of hesitation flashed in Li Fan's heart. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan decided to wait and see for the time being. After all, the situation had not yet deteriorated to the point where his life was in danger. The originally flat horizon in the distance had now disappeared from view. The entire 10,000 Immortal Island was floating in midair, and the faces of the cultivators from the Five Elders Association above were clearly visible. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out on the island. Unexpectedly, a large number of cultivators appeared out of nowhere. There were so many of them that they seemed to overflow the 10,000 Immortal Island, making the island itself almost unable to accommodate them all. A clamor arose from among them. What's going on? Where is this place? I remember I was meditating in the Tianshuan mirror. How did I suddenly end up here? Look, the Tianshuan mirror has turned into a stone. Hearing their exclamations, Zhao Shuyuan muttered under his breath, this is bad. Even the Tianshuan mirror has been stripped of its power. It seems we can't count on these reinforcements anymore. Only then did Li Fan realize that these people were actually cultivators who had been meditating in the space within the Tianshuan mirror on 10,000 Immortal Island. Now that the island was about to be captured by the Five Elders Association, the Tianshuan mirror, for its own safety, had cancelled its so-called empowerment. The wondrous sub-mirror on the island had been turned into an ordinary stone. The cultivators who had awakened from their meditation looked at the overwhelming number of enemies and finally realized the precariousness of their situation. Fellow Taoists, I've heard that the Five Elders Association has something called a soul contract. Once you sign it, your soul will be completely under their control. You'll lose your freedom, and by then, living will be worse than death. That's right, they definitely want to capture us alive and force us to sign the soul contract. If we're going to be enslaved, we might as well risk everything in a fight. With so many of us, we might still have a slim chance of survival. After the initial shock, someone quickly rallied the others to break through the blockade of the Five Elders Association. It is said that strength lies in numbers. With the sudden addition of so many reinforcements, the cultivators of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance on the island grew bolder. Soon, under the leadership of a few cultivators, they launched a desperate charge. Li Fan, however, did not follow blindly. He pulled at the sleeve of Zhao Shuyuan, who was darting his eyes around, and asked through voice transmission, Taoist Zhao, is there any way to escape? Zhao Shuyuan chuckled, held up his hand, and signaled with 5 fingers. Easy, just 50,000 contribution points, and I'll transfer them to you right now. Li Fan nodded. Zhao Shuyuan's face darkened. Is Master Li Fan's life worth so little to you? 500,000 contribution points. And that's because of our life and death friendship. Li Fan looked at Zhao Shuyuan and smiled faintly. He didn't haggle with him and immediately made the transaction for 500,000 points. Brother, I'm not greedy for money. Fair is fair, even blood brothers have to settle accounts clearly. Zhao Shuyuan explained for himself. Then he whispered, currently, the only possible way to escape from this 10,000 Immortal Island is through that ancient tree in the Qingfeng Hall. Qingfeng Hall, Li Fan's eyes flickered. In his 113th lifetime, he had once contacted Qingfeng Hall, a lone organization hidden on 10,000 Immortal Island, through He Zhanghao. The ancient tree with a human face inside had left a deep impression on him. The place where the ancient tree was located seemed to be a separate space. Moreover, it could gather a significant amount of spirit mist grass in an instant, indicating that, like the Tianshuan mirror, it was connected to other spaces in the outside world. Thank you for the advice, Taoist Zhao. Li Fan cupped his hands in gratitude and was about to leave. He suddenly thought of something and returned shortly after. Li Fan stared closely at Zhao Shuyuan, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Taoist Li Fan, why are you looking at me instead of running for your life? Zhao Shuyuan asked, feeling bewildered. Taoist Zhao, would you consider selling your current body? Li Fan asked in a faint voice. Zhao Shuyuan was startled, and with a flicker, he widened the distance between himself and Li Fan. You, Zhao Shuyuan looked at Li Fan with disbelief, as if recognizing his true nature for the first time. Ignoring Zhao Shuyuan's wild thoughts, Li Fan continued, I've been awake for so long, and I've always stayed within the territory of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Now, I have a basic understanding of the Alliance as a whole, but I've never had the chance to see the Five Elders Association, which can rival the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. And the information about them within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance is pitifully scarce. I'm really curious about the Five Elders Association. Li Fan's gaze swept over Zhao Shuyuan's puppet body. My true body must escape, of course. But I'd like to take this opportunity to see the other side. Taoist, is there any method that would allow me to temporarily control your puppet body? Li Fan asked slowly. Zhao Shuyuan finally understood Li Fan's intentions. After a moment of thought, he muttered in a low voice, you should have said so earlier, you scared me. As long as the price is right, it's not impossible. Li Fan was overjoyed upon hearing this. Great, name your price. Zhao Shuyuan once again signaled with 5 fingers and, not giving Li Fan any room for misinterpretation, said, this is my first time letting someone possess me. 50,000 contribution points, no less. 50,000, it is. I, Li Fan, am not a stingy person. Chapter 491. Hold your breath and focus. Split a strand of your consciousness and bring it to my hand. Outside, the sound of wailing grew louder. Zhao Shuyuan, who had just received his contribution points, spoke to Li Fan in a deep voice. As he spoke, a newly formed branch extended from his palm. A single green leaf stood proudly at the tip, solitary and independent. Upon hearing this, Li Fan immediately split a small part of his consciousness and directed it towards the branch in Zhao Shuyuan's hand. As soon as he approached, he felt an inexplicable pull from the green leaf at the tip of the branch. Unable to control himself, he plunged straight into it. His vision gradually became clear, and in an instant, Li Fan felt that apart from his true self and his clone, he now had an additional body. Fortunately, he had the secret technique of Tao transformation, which allowed him to be accustomed to multitasking over the years. Otherwise, it might have been difficult for him to adapt. Controlling the puppet body felt almost the same as using his clone technique in terms of perception. However, he could clearly sense the separation between consciousness and the physical body, unlike the seamless unity of his clone. It felt more like he was driving, rather than inhabiting a living body. The transaction is complete. This body is now at your disposal, Zhao Shuyuan's voice echoed in his mind. As long as you don't deliberately do anything disgusting, it's fine even if you destroy it. Oh, and when the puppet body is damaged, a forced self-destruct mechanism will activate to prevent the consciousness from being captured. You might experience some shock to your soul. His voice gradually faded until it became barely audible. As the split consciousness familiarized itself with the puppet body, Li Fan's true self rushed towards the location of Qingfeng Hall from his memory. By this time, the entire 10,000 Immortal Island had already been drawn to the front of the purple door in the sky by the Heaven and Earth Displacement Formation. It was continuously being devoured by the teleportation formation entering the territory of the Five Elders Association. The cultivators who had just attempted to break through the blockade with their numbers were all reduced to ashes. After this bloody lesson, the remaining cultivators, who were still alive, sat on the ground in despair, waiting for their unknown fate to unfold. Meanwhile, Li Fan strode into the inconspicuous shop of Qingfeng Hall. It was now empty, with no sign of the sloppy old man. He called out a few times, but no one responded. After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan took out a pile of top-grade spirit stones from his storage ring and placed them on the floor of Qingfeng Hall. Are these enough to buy a way out? Li Fan asked loudly. There was no response for a long time. Li Fan then took out another pile of top-grade spirit stones and added them. The total value was now close to 1,000,000 contribution points. This time, the seemingly empty Qingfeng Hall finally reacted. A wisp of green ripple spread through the air, forming a familiar green door. Li Fan's heart stirred, and he stepped through it. After a brief blur of his vision, he found himself back in the space he had visited before. The ancient tree mentioned by Zhao Shuyuan stood before him. However, the human face on the tree had disappeared, making it look no different from an ordinary tree. What a generous move, Taoist friend, a crisp female voice suddenly rang out just as Li Fan was about to speak. Ah Lu, since we've accepted his offering, let's help him leave. Yes, miss, the human face appeared on the ancient tree, glanced at Li Fan, and responded in a muffled voice. Honored guest, please step inside. The ancient tree opened its giant mouth, revealing a passage. Thank you, young lady. Li Fan cupped his hands in the direction of the voice and then stepped into the hole in the ancient tree. As soon as Li Fan's figure disappeared, the ancient tree closed its mouth and returned to its original appearance. Miss, the way ancient cultivators speak is quite interesting, a silvery laugh echoed in the air as the branches and leaves of the ancient tree quivered in response. The experience felt similar to using a long-distance teleportation formation. The surrounding scenery shifted from darkness to a kaleidoscope of colors, and then everything brightened. After adjusting to the discomfort in his body, Li Fan looked around and found that he was still in Qingfeng Hall. However, there were now 1 or 2 other cultivators present in the hall, and the distant sounds of the market, calm and unhurried, indicated that he was no longer in the dangerous territory of Kongyansi. After discreetly scouting the area, Li Fan finally figured out his current location. He had already reached the heartland of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, in Xuanwei Prefecture, near Tianyan Prefecture. It seemed the news of the fall of 10,000 Immortal Island had not yet reached this place. For now, Li Fan redirected his attention back to the puppet body on the island. Amid the desperate cries of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance cultivators, the island was finally completely engulfed by the purple teleportation formation. After a long period of darkness, when the sky lit up again, what unfolded before their eyes was a strange scene. It had been daytime moments ago, but after passing through the purple door and arriving at the territory of the Five Elders Association, it was now night. There was no bright moon in the sky, but countless brilliant stars sparkled, competing with each other in radiance. Rivers of stars flowed across the sky, with mesmerizing light and shadows, creating a breathtaking spectacle. For most of the people present, it was the first time they had ever seen such a magnificent starry sky, and 9 out of 10 were so captivated by the sight that they lost themselves in it. The once wailing 10,000 Immortal Island fell silent in an instant. Members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, welcome to the humane heavenly land. A middle-aged cultivator in a white robe flew above the crowd and spoke loudly. I know you may have many misunderstandings about our Five Elders Association. But don't worry, it won't be long before you completely dispel these misunderstandings. By then, I'm sure you will make the right choice to abandon the darkness and join our Five Elders Association. The white-robed cultivator said with a smile. Seeing that the Five Elders Association didn't seem as vicious as rumored, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, they didn't believe a word of the misunderstandings he mentioned. First, I ask you all to leave this island. As the white-robed cultivator spoke, a group of burly cultivators flew out. They were armed with sharp weapons and clad in heavy armor. They looked more like soldiers than cultivators. Sensing their aura, each of them had a cultivation level of nascent soul. All the 10,000 Immortal Alliance cultivators present turned pale, not daring to resist, and allowed themselves to be escorted off 10,000 Immortal Island. It seems they're not here specifically for me, but just for the island. That's strange. What's so special about 10,000 Immortal Island? Blending into the crowd, Li Fan watched with a serious expression as the white-robed cultivator flew onto the island. Then, dozens of other powerful cultivators appeared one after another and entered the island. Explosive roars echoed as building after building on the island collapsed. They seemed to be searching for something. Chapter 492. Move quickly. Stop looking around. 10,000 Immortal Island had almost been leveled to the ground, and the cultivators of the Five Elders Association began excavating the underground area. Li Fan wanted to continue observing, but an armored cultivator rebuked him and forcibly relocated him from the area. Several squads of armored cultivators formed a formation and drove the members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance like a herd of sheep, forcing them to the entrance of a small cave at the bottom of a canyon. At the entrance, there was a sinister wind blowing, exuding an eerie and terrifying atmosphere. "Get in there, what are you waiting for?" The leading armored cultivator struck the ground with his weapon, shouting like a thunderclap. Among the group, there were some who looked resentful. They exchanged glances, seemingly plotting a resistance in secret. However, the situation was against them, and after hesitating for a while, they ultimately yielded. One by one, they entered the dark cave. Li Fan, using a puppet body, naturally felt little fear. However, to avoid drawing attention and to survive a bit longer, he pretended to be extremely fearful, following the group inside. As soon as he stepped into the cave, the light vanished from sight. The next moment, a scene completely different from what they had expected appeared before everyone. It wasn't a winding, dark passage inside the mountain. Instead, they inexplicably found themselves in a lush, verdant valley. In the distance, a wooden pavilion seemed visible. Dozens of people were sitting cross-legged in front of the pavilion, listening to a scholar-like cultivator lecturing about something. Seeing that it didn't appear to be an interrogation or torture, the previously agitated cultivators of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance also calmed down. They decided to observe the situation before taking further action. Under the escort of the armored cultivators, the group slowly approached the pavilion. Meanwhile, hidden among the group, Li Fan keenly noticed a peculiar change occurring to his body during the process, causing him to slightly change his expression. As they continued to approach the scholar in the pavilion, their bodies seemed to be shrinking. This change only affected the detained members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. The armored cultivators, the scholar, and even the surrounding scenery of the valley remained unchanged. Although their speed of progress was not reduced, it felt as if they were getting farther away from their target. This strange phenomenon caused a slight commotion among the members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, but it was quickly suppressed. Move faster. In their eyes, the armored cultivators had already swelled to the size of small mountains. Without the slightest mercy, they continued to urge them on. For the first time, experiencing what it was like to see people from the perspective of ants, the members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance found it difficult to remain calm. Their faces gradually turned pale, and they subconsciously followed the orders of the armored cultivators. As they continued moving forward, their bodies kept shrinking. After spending nearly 10 days, they finally arrived in front of the pavilion. In their eyes, the scholar now looked like a towering mountain, reaching up to the sky. "Sit down," the scholar said gently. But in their ears, it sounded like a great bell, filling the heavens and earth. It echoed continuously in their minds. It seemed to resonate deep within their souls, and even though they tried to block their senses, they couldn't help but hear the scholar's words in their minds. So, they all lost control of their bodies and obediently sat down on the ground. What kind of divine power is this? Everyone was horrified. The armored cultivators all saluted the scholar, and seeing that the members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance had already sat down, they quietly left. The scholar glanced at the crowd and sighed softly, another group of lost lambs. However, since you are fated to be here, I will not let you stray further. The crowd, who considered themselves part of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, naturally felt indignant upon hearing this. In your eyes, what do you think of our Five Elders Association? At this moment, the scholar asked softly. Using soul contracts to control cultivators, absolutely evil. Struggling on the brink of extinction. Within 1,000 years, they will surely be destroyed by the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Ignorant and backward, though not virtuous, they have managed to contend with our 10,000 Immortal Alliance for so long, so there must be something commendable. Under the scholar's questioning, everyone spoke out, giving their own answers. But the horrified expressions on their faces clearly showed that their responses were not voluntary. However, not all the cultivators lost control and responded to the scholar's question. At least the puppet body Li Fan was inhabiting wasn't affected. Some nascent soul cultivators also furrowed their brows, resisting the scholar's control. Isn't this just a group version of the heavenly doctors? Interrogation technique. Li Fan was also deeply shocked. Although its power seems inferior to the heavenly doctor's personal execution, the number of targets is vast. Li Fan remained highly vigilant, ready to abandon the puppet body at any moment. Fortunately, the scholar did not pay much attention to Li Fan. The crowd continued answering one by one. The scholar smiled, listening attentively. After a long time, the voices subsided, and the area outside the pavilion gradually quieted down. The scholar shook his head and said, "Utter nonsense. Do you know where our Five Elders Association originated?" Everyone shook their heads. After the Immortal Venerable of Tao transmission created a new path, the terrifying cultivation speed of unaffiliated cultivators led them to launch an assault on the immortal sects. Meanwhile, the sects themselves were divided into two factions, fighting and killing each other. However, before we could reach a conclusion, the scholar didn't directly answer but began to recount history. The great calamity of heaven and earth descended, making it impossible to practice the same Tao. The immortal sects suffered devastating blows, with less than 1% surviving. Yet, having ruled the Xuanwang realm for 10,000 years, they were deeply rooted. Some surviving sects escaped this catastrophe. They secluded themselves, waiting for the storm of bloodshed to pass. When the killing ended, and darkness faded, they united once again on the ruins. This was the embryonic form of the current Five Elders Association. Disregarding the stunned reactions, the scholar continued to speak slowly. The struggle between the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and the Five Elders Association is, in essence, still a battle between the old and new forces of cultivation. All conflicts in this world largely stem from the oppression of the newcomers by the predecessors. That's why this battle has lasted for thousands of years and continues endlessly. It will never stop until one side is completely defeated. You are members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and have been deceived, so I do not blame you. The scholar showed a look of compassion. The members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, who were seated and listening to the scholar's lecture, were all stunned. Although they had long been accustomed to the existence of the Five Elders Association, it was their first time hearing about its origins. Li Fan, however, was not as surprised as the others. One of the 5 longevity immortal heavenly sovereigns of the Five Elders Association, Senior Sister Zhao, was once the head of the Grand Tao sect, one of the 10 great immortal sects. So the fact that the Five Elders Association was formed by the surviving members of the ancient sects was something Li Fan had already suspected. Chapter 493. It's nothing more than a struggle for interests, so why distinguish between good and evil? If we were truly as evil as they say, how could we have withstood the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's assaults for 1,000 years without being defeated? The scholar raised a powerful question again. Many of the cultivators from the 10,000 Immortal Alliance looked thoughtful after hearing this. However, more of them appeared confused, as if their values were being deeply challenged. Very well, let me first give you an introduction to the current situation of the Five Elders Association. The scholar's enormous figure stood towering between heaven and earth, filling everyone's view as he began to speak. Now, the territory of the Five Elders Association is divided into 5 parts. Each of the 5 heavenly sovereigns governs their own domain. I can't casually comment on the other heavenly sovereigns' territories. If you have the chance in the future, you can explore them on your own. Let me speak only of the current place you find yourselves in, the humane heavenly domain. The scholar's words drew the attention of all the cultivators present, including Li Fan. Each of the 5 heavenly sovereigns defies the natural order and creates their own unique region. In our humane heavenly domain, the most important principle is the way of the heavenly sovereign's Tao. It is also the cosmic law, which everyone must follow and none can defy. The scholar paused and revealed the origin of the name. Humane heavenly domain. Compared to heaven and earth, human beings are but insignificant creatures. The body and name may perish, but the rivers and mountains will endure for ages. Even cultivators who can stir seas and rivers, seemingly altering the shape of heaven and earth, will find that the rivers flow anew once more. After their death, everything becomes empty and their past achievements vanish like bubbles, no longer existing. Only the longevity immortal heavenly sovereign, who defies the laws of heaven and earth, can truly change the heavens and earth. Why is it that only the longevity immortal heavenly sovereign can accomplish such a grand feat? In our humane heavenly domain, changing the heavens and earth is something anyone can achieve. The scholar's words resounded forcefully. Hearing this, everyone felt a surge of courage, yet many were puzzled. Several cultivators, emboldened, asked, "Sir, what do you mean by saying that anyone can change the heavens and earth?" The scholar smiled faintly. "When you arrived, did you see the vast and radiant starlight?" Everyone nodded. In truth, those are not real stars but former cultivators. The scholar's words echoed like thunder across the heavens and earth. With a wave of his massive hand, the originally bright sky instantly dimmed. The darkness lasted only for a moment, then was illuminated again by countless stars. In the humane heavenly domain, regardless of cultivation level, as long as one possesses sufficient faith and courage, they can transform into a star and ascend to the firmament. While eternally shining upon the world, they can also alter the original shape of the heavens and earth. A long time ago, in the humane heavenly domain, there was a young man born between two great mountains. The scholar began telling a story again. The mountains were obstructive, making it very difficult to come and go. The villagers lived in extreme poverty because of this. The young man, seeing such circumstances, made a grand vow in his youth to completely level these two mountains and carve out a path for his kin. The place was remote, and few people visited. The young man did not know there were immortals in the world, he only tried to dig the mountains with human effort. Though he faced misunderstanding and ridicule, he never wavered or regretted his resolve. With persistence, even metal and stone can be split. 100 years passed, and when the young man had become an elderly man, nearing death, he still did not change his will. After his death, he transformed into a star and ascended to the sky. Under the light of his star, the two mountains vanished without a trace. This is an example of a mortal body completely changing the heavens and earth. If a mere mortal can do so, how much more could a cultivator? In the humane heavenly domain, there have been countless examples of altering heaven and earth. While Li Fan's puppet body was immersed in the scholar's narration, his true self had already arrived at Shilin Prefecture through a teleportation array. The 10,000 Immortal Island had been abducted, and all teleportation points leading to the Kongyun Sea had been rendered ineffective. He had no choice but to settle for the next best option and travel through the teleportation array to the neighboring Shilin Prefecture. When he attempted to fly into the Kongyun Sea, Li Fan suddenly discovered that the entire Kongyun Sea was enveloped in an invisible barrier. It was sealed off, preventing outsiders from entering. It seems they finally reacted and imposed martial law. Li Fan narrowed his eyes but did not force his way in. Instead, his true body returned to the nearby Immortal City, and his attention shifted to his clone, Zhou Qingang. Ignoring the continuous notifications from the communication talismans on his body, the clone flew straight to the place where the 10,000 Immortal Island used to be. Along the way, many fearful cultivators, unsure of what had happened, were also heading towards the 10,000 Immortal Island. Only after losing the teleportation formation did they realize how precious instantaneous travel was. It took more than 10 days for the clone to reach his destination. By then, a large number of cultivators had already gathered here, pointing and whispering among themselves. At the center of the crowd was a massive black void. The surrounding seawater seemed to be obstructed by some force, unable to flow into the black hole. In the blue sea, the black hole's presence looked so strange and out of place. Seeing this, Li Fan couldn't help but frown slightly. This appearance, how does it resemble the time when I first saw the sea of crimson flames? Could it be? A thought surfaced in his mind, causing Li Fan to be momentarily stunned. When he had initially seen the disappearance of the 10,000 Immortal Island and the lingering, intense energy around the void, he had instinctively thought that Crimson Flame must have acted and completely destroyed the 10,000 Immortal Island. Indeed, it looked very much like it. But since he hadn't witnessed the island's destruction firsthand, there was always the possibility of a second explanation. That was, like the current world, the 10,000 Immortal Island had been completely relocated through some method. Moreover, later, when Crimson Flame was killed and Ink Death appeared in the world, he still hadn't seen the destruction of the 10,000 Immortal Island with his own eyes. Because before the island completely disappeared, he had been consumed by the black particles. Thinking about the Five Elders Association forcibly abducting the 10,000 Immortal Island this time, Li Fan couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that the 10,000 Immortal Island really harbors some secret? Recalling the various secret histories he had read, none of them mentioned anything about this. Li Fan began to doubt his own judgment again. This doesn't make sense either. If the 10,000 Immortal Island really hid something, the 10,000 Immortal Alliance would certainly be aware. They should have guarded it strictly. How could they have allowed the Five Elders Association to take it so easily? While Li Fan was racking his brain, he overheard a cultivator among the onlookers sigh, "Truly, the world is unpredictable. Who would have thought that the original place where the Tao transmission Immortal Venerable spread his teachings would disappear like this?" Li Fan was slightly taken aback. He quickly stepped forward and greeted the cultivator. Then he asked, "Fellow Taoist, just now you mentioned the Original place where the Tao transmission Immortal Venerable spread his teachings, what do you mean by that? Chapter 494. The other party's attitude was initially friendly, but upon hearing Li Fan's question, his expression subtly changed. He, fellow Taoist, you must have heard wrong. I don't know anything about the original place where the teachings were spread. He quickly waved his hand, as if trying to dismiss the conversation, implying Li Fan had the wrong person. Without waiting for Li Fan to respond, he immediately flew away at a rapid speed, even faster than most nascent soul cultivators. Li Fan had finally encountered someone in the know. How could he let this clue slip away so easily? He quickly followed but maintained a safe distance, trailing far behind. At the same time, he transmitted his voice, saying, fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. I mean no harm, I'm just very interested in what you mentioned earlier. The person ahead gave no response and instead accelerated, trying to shake off Li Fan. However, Li Fan continued to follow closely, persistently trying to persuade him. After more than half a day, the other party, seeing that he couldn't shake off Li Fan, finally began to slow down. He looked around, ensuring no one was nearby, his face fluctuating between uncertainty and frustration. After a moment of hesitation, he whispered, this is not a suitable place to talk. Follow me, fellow Taoist. Li Fan smiled slightly and cupped his hands. In that case, thank you in advance, fellow Taoist. Following the man, they flew westward for hundreds of miles before diving into the depths of the ocean. They arrived at a building resembling a crystal palace. After inviting Li Fan into a room deep within the palace, the man sighed slightly and said, it's not that I didn't want to tell you earlier, but I feared speaking recklessly could bring disaster. What should I call you, fellow Taoist? Li Fan nodded, not probing too deeply yet, but instead asking for his name first. I am Sima Chengkong, the man said, waving his hand, summoning a servant with a human upper body and a fish tail lower body. The servant poured 2 cups of tea for them before bowing and leaving. Li Fan glanced at the servant. Just a beast species, a personal preference, forgive me for the oddity, Sima Chengkong said nonchalantly, sipping his tea. Beast species. Li Fan's eyes flickered. He had once discovered similar half-beast, half-human corpses in Mr. Bai's basement in Ningyuan City. Senior brother Zhang had also referred to them in the same way. Li Fan had thought they were extinct, but it seemed they still existed. However, Li Fan had no intention of making a fuss over it. He simply nodded slightly and steered the conversation back on track. Fellow Taoist Zhou, correct. Sima Chengkong bluntly exposed the identity of Li Fan's clone. Now that we're in my private residence, feel free to speak your mind. Do you know why the 10,000 Immortal Island is called by that name? Sima Chengkong asked. Li Fan had indeed wondered about this before. Because the capital cities of the various regions were all named after their provinces, such as Daoyuan City, Shilin City, and Tianyan City. Yet the base in the Kongyan Sea was not called Kongyan Island or City but was instead called 10,000 Immortal Island. He had searched through records and found no special explanation, assuming it was merely a customary name. But now it seemed there was a hidden reason behind it. I'd like to hear more, Li Fan said, his face solemn, listening intently. A long time ago, when the Kongyan Sea was still a vast plain, there was a large lake. In the middle of the lake was an island. This was where the first Immortal Venerable of Tao transmission gave his teachings to the people. At that time, thousands of cultivators and mortals gathered to listen to the Immortal Venerable's teachings. They all comprehended the immortal laws of the Immortal Venerable, laying the foundation for the original 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Sima Chengkong spoke slowly, perhaps due to the Immortal Venerable's blessing, even after the landscape changed over the centuries, the island never altered its shape. Several thousand years later, when the current 10,000 Immortal Alliance was established and selecting a capital city, they chose this island to honor the Immortal Venerable who had spread the teachings. In a sense, it wouldn't be wrong to say this island is the origin of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Hence, people call it 10,000 Immortal Island. Sima Chengkong succinctly explained the history to Li Fan while secretly observing his reaction. Li Fan pondered Sima Chengkong's words and furrowed his brow. If this is the origin of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and the place where the Immortal Venerable first spread his teachings, why is it so little known today? Why is it so hard to find any relevant information? Moreover, how is it left so unguarded that someone managed to seize it? Li Fan shook his head, seemingly skeptical of Sima Chengkong's story. Sima Chengkong sighed deeply. That's exactly why I was hesitant to say too much earlier. He paused for a moment, then continued in a low voice. Tens of thousands of pioneers sacrificed their lives, spreading the new Tao method of the Immortal Venerable. That's how the 10,000 Immortal Alliance we see today came to be. This should have been a heroic tale, something all current cultivators should remember. But now, it has been downplayed, even sealed away. The reason is that the Immortal Venerable has not appeared for many years, and the ones in control of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance are no longer the original tens of thousands of transmitters. Sima Chengkong drank the rest of his tea in one gulp and said, the struggle between the old and new teachings was far more brutal than we can imagine. The sects at that time, facing something that threatened their rule, didn't hesitate to use the sword. Almost all the true, pure Tao transmitters perished in the fight against the sects. Those who survived are merely opportunists who seized control of the Immortal Venerable's legacy. Sima Chengkong's tone carried a hint of disdain. Li Fan narrowed his eyes. This explanation was barely acceptable. In the mortal world, the rise and fall of power often led to the distortion or erasure of the achievements of former heroes, which was not uncommon. The same principle seemed to apply in the cultivation world. An island that can survive the test of time without changing its shape might indeed conceal some secrets. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance must have thoroughly investigated it before. Not finding anything, they probably left it alone. But the Five Elders Association must have recently uncovered something, risking a full-scale war to seize the island. Li Fan's thoughts raced. Before long, he looked at Sima Chengkong, who was still brooding over the injustices, and asked, Taoist Sima, you seem to know a lot about the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's secrets. But according to what you've said, the symbolic significance of 10,000 Immortal Islands seems greater than its actual value. Doesn't it seem unworthy of the Five Elders Association to take such a risk and seize it by force? What do you think? Sima Chengkong's expression grew serious. After thinking for a moment, he said slowly, I have a theory. The first Tao transmitters progressed quickly in their cultivation, so their customs and habits were still very similar to mortals. Mortals have a tradition of returning to their roots after death. Thus, after the Tao transmitters were killed in their battles with the immortal sects, their remaining bodies were often brought back to 10,000 Immortal Island for burial by their companions. Chapter 495. I believe the Five Elders Association may have come specifically for these remains, Sima Chengkong said. Solemnly. Remains. What would they want with these remains? Li Fan was shocked to learn that beneath the ordinary surface of 10,000 Immortals Island, there could be the buried corpses of numerous ancient cultivators. At the same time, he was puzzled by Sima Chengkong's response. I cannot know for sure. Maybe the Five Elders Association has the ability to resurrect the dead. If those original transmitters of the Tao were to awaken and see the current state of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, they would likely storm the headquarters, battling to the death, Sima Chengkong sneered. Careful with your words, fellow Taoist, Li Fan diverted the conversation without addressing it directly. Mount Kanyan's changes, the original transmitters, the origins of 10,000 Immortals Island. All of these are deeply hidden secrets. Based on what I know of today's cultivators, even those who have reached the soul transformation true monarch stage might not be as well versed in such secrets as you are. Who exactly are you? Li Fan couldn't help but ask curiously. What background could I possibly have? I'm just an ordinary cultivator, Sima Chengkong dismissed it lightly. Seeing Li Fan's doubtful expression, Sima Chengkong proudly said, let me tell you, once something happens in this world, it always leaves a trace. Erasing a cultivator's memory doesn't mean you can completely bury the truth of history. Sima Chengkong suddenly stood up. I have nothing to hide from you. I, Sima Chengkong, am a historian. As he finished speaking, his entire body's blood and energy seemed to surge intensely. Li Fan, who was very familiar with the power of blood and energy due to his cultivation of the creation furnace technique, was shocked to find that the energy in Sima Chengkong's body was incredibly complex. Some of it was incredibly vibrant, like that of a newborn infant. But some of it felt ancient, as if it had existed for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Blood energy burst from Sima Chengkong's body, forming a vast river of blood over his head. As Li Fan observed closely, each drop of blood contained countless images and sounds. The higher up he looked, the older the recorded scenes became. The blood river was magnificent and vast, and the sheer amount of information recorded made even someone as mentally powerful as Li Fan feel dizzy after a brief observation. Shocked, he quickly averted his gaze. Sima Changkong, noticing Li Fan's reaction, slowly withdrew the external manifestation of his energy. He calmly explained, "This is the Bloodline Historical Archives, a work compiled and cultivated by the Sima family for generations. Since our ancestor, Sima Pei, created the blood history technique, our Sima family has taken it upon ourselves to meticulously record the history of the Xuanwang realm. Even if we die, we have no regrets. This has been passed down through 56 generations." 56 generations. Li Fan was momentarily stunned and was about to ask more when Sima Changkong nodded and said, "Indeed. Although cultivating the blood history shortens our lifespan to that of a regular mortal, our Sima family has never retreated. Why fear death? As long as there are descendants of the Sima family, the Bloodline Historical Archive will find a suitable heir to awaken and continue the great work of recording history." Sima Changkong spoke with a face full of righteousness. Li Fan couldn't help but feel deep respect upon hearing this. He had always admired historians. Back when he was the Grand Preceptor of the Great Zan Empire, wielding power over life and death, the entire court cowered under his tyranny, not daring to voice opposition. Only the historians of Great Zan feared neither his sword nor his wrath. Even when he threatened to execute their entire families, these historians insisted on recording Li Fan's crimes of disrupting the court and oppressing the Empress Dowager in their records. After executing a few of them, Li Fan found that their successors remained just as stubborn, so he left them be. Unexpectedly, even in the Xuanwang realm, historians still existed. While feeling a newfound respect, Li Fan's thoughts stirred. The history of the Xuanwang realm was shrouded in mystery, with much of it intentionally concealed. To try and uncover what happened solely by reading ancient texts was a fool's errand. However, having Sima Changkong, a living embodiment of history, was a completely different matter. Li Fan realized the importance of this historian in front of him and eagerly continued chatting with him. Sima Changkong, being straightforward by nature, began to reveal more as he grew more familiar with Li Fan. Li Fan gradually learned that while the Sima family could use their Bloodline Historical Archive to record history, the Xuanwang realm was vast, and no single person could know everything. Thus, the Sima family had also mastered the technique of blood-splitting clones, which allowed them to split off parts of their blood to create clones. These many clones traveled across the world, recording history as accurately and comprehensively as possible. This explained why the Sima family members generally had short lifespans. The river of blood recorded countless pieces of information from the Xuanwang realm's past. To prevent unforeseen events from wiping out decades of accumulated knowledge, the Sima family's ancestors painstakingly devised a secret method called "one is all." As long as there was still a trace of Sima family bloodline in the world, the Bloodline History Archive would never be broken. Li Fan then asked about the definition of the Sima family bloodline. Sima Changkong smiled proudly. As long as there was even a trace of Sima blood in someone's ancestry, no matter how diluted, the Bloodline History Archive could still be passed down. After thousands of years, the descendants of the Sima family's mortal lineage had spread throughout the Xuanwang realm. In other words, unless all mortals in the Xuanwang realm were exterminated, the Bloodline History Archive could never be completely eradicated. Sima family, truly extraordinary. What a remarkable method and divine technique! Li Fan exclaimed in admiration. Li Fan then asked Sima Changkong for a communication talisman and carefully stored it in his storage ring. "Taoist Sima, we must keep in close contact from now on," Li Fan said warmly, continuing to chat with this historian of the cultivation world for quite some time before reluctantly parting. Upon returning to the old site of 10,000 Immortals Island, Li Fan's true body, located far away in Shilin Prefecture, noticed that the communication talisman issued by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was flashing continuously. Puzzled, Li Fan took out the talisman and sensed the message. After a moment, his expression became somewhat strange. "I've been ordered to act as the acting island lord of 10,000 Immortals Island, responsible for rebuilding the immortal city of Kongyansi. The location is right above the former 10,000 Immortals Island. Execute immediately, without error." Li Fan read the message several times, finally confirming it wasn't a joke. Chapter 496. The order came directly from the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's Governance Hall, accompanied by a Deputy Island Master's talisman and detailed handover instructions, making it unmistakably official. The stated reason was due to the recent assault on 10,000 Immortal Island incident, and within the surviving system cultivators in the Kongyan Sea, Li Fan held the highest rank. Since the two soul transformation true monarchs, Xian and Hongxi, were unable to return for various reasons, it was natural for Li Fan to take over as the acting island master by default. However, Li Fan felt no joy from this sudden gift falling from the sky. After carefully reading the transfer instructions, his brow furrowed tightly. Although the role of special steward of the martial hall was largely ceremonial, only nascent soul cultivators or higher could hold such a position based on rank. The position itself wasn't low in rank. There was no issue with that. However, in the vast Kongyan Sea, there were certainly many cultivators of a similar rank within the system who had not been captured by the Five Elders Association. So why was this heavy responsibility specifically handed to Li Fan? In this life, he had no hidden backing or powerful connections. Was it a test, a warning, or perhaps an appeasement? Li Fan had no way of knowing. But since the order had been issued, there was no point in overthinking. As the saying goes, when soldiers come, you block them, when water comes, you dam it. A cold glint flashed in Li Fan's eyes as he flew towards Kongyan Sea. As he neared the edge of Shilin Prefecture and approached the Kongyan Sea, he was once again blocked by an invisible barrier. Li Fan took out a communication talisman and injected spiritual energy into it. A radiant, wand 10,000, character shot towards the barrier. Ripples spread across the shield, and Li Fan reached out with his right hand. He felt as though an invisible substance clung to his arm, changing shape as he pressed forward. Finally, it was like popping a sticky bubble. With some thought, Li Fan propelled his body through the invisible barrier. In the next moment, Li Fan found himself back in the Kongyan Sea. Following the coordinates listed in the instructions, Li Fan flew at full speed. 4 days later, he reached his destination. A giant dust-ferrying ship, very familiar in appearance, quietly hovered in the air. On the deck, the vague silhouettes of numerous black-robed cultivators could be seen. After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan flew towards the ship. It seemed the black-robed cultivators were already aware of Li Fan's arrival, as they did not move to stop him. "Taoist Li Fan, please come here." As soon as he set foot on the deck, a voice came from within the ship. Li Fan headed towards the voice, all the while discreetly observing the black-robed cultivators around him. A familiar aura of coldness and bloodlust. They were likely members of the era, those responsible for handling special matters. They were the predecessors of the heavenly artificers who emerged after the establishment of the Tianquan net in his previous life. Not wanting to stir up trouble for now, Li Fan merely took a quick glance and then retracted his gaze, continuing towards the inner chamber. Soon, he reached a room deep in the corridor and pushed the door open. A white-haired youth sat at a long table, his expression grim. Characters and images flashed rapidly across the long table, as if equipped with some sort of anti-snooping mechanism. Everything Li Fan saw appeared distorted and blurry. "Island Master Li, you've already received the appointment document, so I won't repeat the details." Without looking up from the table, the white-haired youth continued, "I want to emphasize 3 main points. First, the reconstruction work must be completed within 6 months. Second, the budget for this project is limited. You need to strictly control the expenses for materials. If the actual cost exceeds the approved limit and delays the construction, you will be held responsible. However, if you can complete the task on time, you will be duly rewarded." The third point, and the most important. At this point, the white-haired youth finally lifted his head and stared at Li Fan. Li Fan's heart skipped a beat as he realized that the white-haired youth's eye sockets were completely hollow, filled with an eerie darkness. The talisman appointment doesn't officially state this in writing. Once you leave this room, I will not admit to having said this. However, it's something you must do. If there is any failure. The white-haired youth let out a cold snort and lightly tapped the table. A stream of light shot out from the long table, heading straight for Li Fan. Li Fan raised his hand to block it. As soon as the light touched his body, it vanished. At the same time, new information appeared in his mind. "This is..." Li Fan frowned slightly. "It's the formation diagram for the Schwantian Nether Lock Formation," the white-haired youth explained, noticing Li Fan's confusion. When the 10,000 Immortal Island was relocated, the nether passage beneath it was exposed. You are required to inscribe the Schwantian Nether Lock Formation into the foundation of the new Kongyan Immortal City while constructing it. With the formation diagram as a guide, you don't need to be particularly proficient in formations. As long as you're not completely ignorant of them, it should be manageable. As an ancient cultivator, this shouldn't be a problem for you. The white-haired youth spoke before Li Fan could refuse. How should I address you, fellow Taoist? Li Fan asked, furrowing his brow and not immediately agreeing. The white-haired youth gazed at Li Fan with his hollow eyes before finally speaking, Di Jinglan. Li Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. He had heard of this name before. Immortal formed a golden core in 3 years of cultivation. A golden core that could cut down nascent souls and defeat soul transformation cultivators. Decades ago, he had already reached the peak of soul transformation, yet he gave up the opportunity to integrate with the Tao, simply because the soul of heaven and earth was too weak and did not meet his expectations. A legend among cultivators, known as Lord Jinglan. Li Fan had long admired his name. He hadn't expected to meet him in person today. However, Li Fan remained composed, neither humble nor arrogant, and cupped his hands. So, it's the esteemed Lord Jinglan. Although the order comes from the governance hall of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, asking me to be the acting island master and set up this Schwantian netherlock formation. I'm afraid I cannot comply. Li Fan's tone was firm. Lord Jinglan frowned. Feeling the space around him gradually becoming heavier, Li Fan's expression remained unchanged. He continued, this situation is far too suspicious, filled with conspiracies at every turn. Who can guarantee that the 10,000 Immortal Alliance won't cast me aside once I've served my purpose? Lord Jinglan was taken aback by his words. Then, with a slight smile, he withdrew his oppressive aura. So, that's what you're worried about. There's no need for that. Lord Jinglan stood up and walked to the side of the room. As he moved, the walls of the ship became transparent. It was as if they were standing in the clouds, with the vast Kanyan Sea stretching out before them. Island Master Li comes from ancient times, so you may not know this. After the Great Calamity descended, strange entities called aberrations began to appear across the world. Lord Jinglan spoke slowly, and there are a few places where they appear most frequently and densely. Chapter 497. Kanyan Sea, Luoyan Province, Kangwu Abyss, Qinling Prefecture. As Lord Jinglan spoke, he mentioned some names that were either familiar or foreign to Li Fan. The reason behind it all is that these locations harbor the passages to the nether. We haven't yet concluded what exactly the nature of these nether passages is. However, based on our research, if these passages remain exposed, the frequency of strange occurrences in that province will drastically increase. Therefore, we must use the Schwantian nether lock formation to suppress them. The answer Li Fan received from Lord Jinglan was completely unexpected. When 10,000 Immortal Island was still around, we never discovered this nether passage beneath the island. However, based on the annual reports from the Tianji Hall of Kanyan Sea regarding the number of strange events, we determined that there must be one here. Who would have thought it would be at the bottom of the location where the Immortal Venerable of the Tao transmission once preached? Even a trace of the Immortal Venerable's power, after 1,000 years, could still effectively seal the nether passage. But now that 10,000 Immortal Island is gone, this passage must be blocked. Although the existence of these strange phenomena is no secret, few know that they can spread. To prevent panic and ensure the stability of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, strict confidentiality is required. Lord Jinglan spoke unhurriedly. All this secrecy, just because of this. Li Fan couldn't help but feel speechless at the unexpected connection between the bizarre request and the strange occurrences across the world. You think it's only because of this? Lord Jinglan glanced coldly at Li Fan. Island Master Li, don't underestimate the strangeness. They are not as easy to deal with as you might imagine. His words carried a deeper meaning, but he chose not to elaborate. Hearing this, Li Fan put away his disdainful expression and nodded slightly. Changing the subject, he asked, then why was I suddenly appointed as the acting island master? And what about this Kanyan Sea? Lord Jinglan interrupted Li Fan's question, shaking his head slowly. It seems that in ancient times, sects were riddled with internal strife. Island Master Li, you're being overly suspicious. Rest assured, everything is proceeding according to protocol. As per ancient regulations, when the entire structure of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance in a certain region is destroyed, the highest-ranked surviving cultivator in that area automatically inherits the primary administrative position. If there are multiple cultivators with the same rank, the one with the higher combat power will be selected. You, my friend, have slain 4 nascent soul cultivators. Even if you claim to have done it with external help, such explanations may fool others, but trying to deceive us, the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, is a bit too optimistic. We have meticulously evaluated the power of every tool sold from the Tianquan mirror. While it's possible for a golden core cultivator to defeat a nascent soul, doing it as cleanly and without leaving a trace like you did, impossible. Among the surviving cultivators of Kanyan Sea, your combat power is unmatched. Who else but you could be the acting island master? Lord Jinglan looked at Li Fan with a half-smile as he explained. Li Fan felt a heavy weight in his heart, and on his face, he forced a look of embarrassment, as if his secret had been exposed. It seems I've been overthinking it. In that case, I accept the responsibility. He calmly replied. Regardless of how much truth there was to it, Lord Jinglan's words had reached this point. If Li Fan refused any longer, he feared he wouldn't be leaving that room alive. Seeing Li Fan's compliance, Lord Jinglan nodded in satisfaction. The blockade of Kanyan Sea will not be lifted until Kanyan Immortal City is fully rebuilt. Of course, the headquarters will also send cultivators to assist in the reconstruction of Kanyan Sea. However, due to certain reasons, the number of reinforcements won't be large. They will only provide limited support in specific areas like the long-distance teleportation formation. The main responsibility will still rest on you. I will also assign a deputy to help you complete the reconstruction of the Immortal City. You can request any materials needed for the construction from him. The detailed list of required resources will be given to you shortly. Your primary task is to coordinate and oversee the surviving cultivators of Kanyan Sea to expedite the rebuilding of Kanyan Immortal City. After giving these instructions, Lord Jinglan finally allowed Li Fan to leave. Later, a cultivator named Zhou Kebao found Li Fan and brought the approved materials list. Island Master Li, this is the detailed list of approved materials for the project. Please review it. The chubby Zhou Kebao smiled as he handed the list to Li Fan. Li Fan took the list and carefully examined it. It was a long and detailed list. Even a rough scan would take considerable time. The various items, both familiar and unfamiliar, were dizzying. Only their names were listed, with no explanation of their specific purposes. It left one feeling lost and confused. Li Fan was no expert in most areas, but anything related to formations did not escape his sharp eye. One of the most important functions of Kanyan Immortal City was its network of teleportation formation. The original 10,000 Immortal Island had 11,687. Teleportation formation, including the long-distance teleportation formation. Li Fan found the special material needed to construct these teleportation formation, dark avoid stone. Based on the quantity listed, he did some quick calculations. Moments later, Li Fan indeed found something amiss. The materials listed were insufficient even to construct the small teleportation formation, let alone the long-distance one. Li Fan's face darkened immediately. Taoist Zhou, did you make a mistake with this list? Please check it again. His eyes flashed with an unmasked killing intent. Zhou Kebao was initially stunned, then quickly took the list and rechecked it. As he examined it, he muttered under his breath, a mistake. Impossible. Could it be that Island Master Li? Before he could finish, he heard Li Fan coldly say, Taoist Zhou, I made an oath before Lord Jinglan. If the task isn't completed on time, my fate will be grim. I'm a small-minded person who holds grudges. If there's no hope of completing the task, I won't mind dragging down those who sabotaged it. Zhou Kebao wiped the sweat from his forehead and quickly pounded his chest. Island Master Li, no need to be so agitated. I'll check it thoroughly again. With that, he hurried away, not daring to meet Li Fan's gaze. Li Fan snorted coldly and closed his eyes, waiting. It took nearly half a day before Zhou Kebao returned with a brand new list. Hee, Island Master Li, your sharp eyes are truly impressive. There was indeed an error. The previous list was only a preliminary budget. The final list includes significantly more materials. Li Fan took the new list and saw that the amount of resources was indeed over 50% more than the previous one. Chapter 498. Li Fan squinted his eyes. Seeing the vast discrepancy in the itemized list that Zhou Kebao, this chubby man, sent him, Li Fan suppressed his initial urge to act out and instead calmed himself. A slight adjustment had led to a 50% discrepancy in quantity. This only meant that the actual number of materials was far greater than what he had in hand. Although there had been some corruption and embezzlement within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Recently, everyone at least made an effort to cover it up. putting on a facade to conceal their actions. But to be this blatant, to the point of being utterly shameless. Rebuilding a whole immortal city is a huge task. Yet, for someone like Joe Cabot to skim off the top so blatantly, right in front of Li Fan, the acting island lord, and with such large quantities. There could only be one explanation. The people behind this were targeting Li Fan directly. That's right, Li Fan's appointment as the acting island lord may have been legitimate and lawful. However, that doesn't prevent someone from exploiting this, launching a conspiracy against him the moment they learned of his appointment. Perhaps it was for him personally, or perhaps for the massive amount of contribution points associated with him. Up until now, everything Li Fan had done, from trading rare Samantabhadra true leaves to gathering and reinvesting the contributions of other cultivators, had been in the open, not intentionally concealed. Except for his dealings with the Empire, every transaction he had made was traceable. It didn't take precise calculations. Even a rough estimate would reveal the staggering amount of contribution points currently in Li Fan's possession. With so much at stake, it was no wonder someone had taken notice of him. Aside from wealth, there was also resentment. Tantai Khan, who suffered a loss during the Samantabhadra true leaf speculation incident, might also be fanning the flames in this situation. People often act only after thorough planning. As his thoughts raced, Li Fan's gaze swept back over the list. After a while, he nodded slightly and carefully put the list away. At the same time, he asked casually, "Fellow Taoist Joe, besides this list, is there anything else you need to hand over?" "No, nothing more." Joe Cabot smiled broadly and shook his head repeatedly. Seeing this, Li Fan sneered inwardly. However, he didn't confront him yet. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, "Rebuilding the immortal city is a matter of great importance, involving many aspects. It's extremely complex. I need to carefully consider the specifics." Li Fan pretended to ponder for a moment, then said, "How about this? I'll make some preparations first. When it's time to officially start the work, I'll contact you, fellow Taoist Joe." Joe Cabot patted his chest and readily agreed, "No problem. Acting Island Master Li, whatever you need, just say the word. I'll fully cooperate to ensure we carry out the task entrusted by Master Jinglin perfectly." Li Fan didn't respond to his flattery. He merely gave Joe Cabot a cold, piercing look for a moment. Then, with a sweep of his sleeve, he left, flying away from the dust-crossing boat. As Li Fan's figure gradually disappeared into the distance, the smile on Joe Cabot's face slowly faded, replaced with disdain and mockery. "Let's see how you handle things in half a year," he muttered coldly. He took out a communication talisman, and after contacting someone, he relayed everything that had transpired. Joe Cabot, thinking he had Li Fan tightly in his grasp and victory within reach, would never have imagined that his every move was being monitored by Li Fan through a heaven-wide omniscient view granted by a formless killing intent. As expected, there's a traitor. It seems I can't count on help from Jinglin's faction. If I want to rebuild the immortal city, I'll have to rely on the people under my control. Returning to the island of Shenhua, Li Fan glanced at Tian Yang, who was standing by and watching the children from Outer Realm, and felt slightly reassured. With Tian Yang, who possesses soul transformation strength, guarding the area, at least we can keep petty troublemakers at bay. But it's still not enough. Li Fan took out a glowing jade token, engraved with the character 10,000, and began to sense it carefully. This was the Island Lord's token, given to him alongside the letter of appointment as acting Island Lord. Aside from symbolizing his authority, its most significant function was that it allowed him to view and contact all the official cultivators under his jurisdiction. A vast network of interpersonal relationships instantly emerged in Li Fan's mind. At the top, of course, was himself. Below him, the cultivators were divided into various departments: the Formation Hall, Martial Arts Hall, Tianji Hall, and the guards of various islands, as well as external personnel from different departments. Each node represented a cultivator. By focusing on a single node, Li Fan could view the basic information of the corresponding cultivator and directly contact them. So, the number of official cultivators in the Kongyan Sea is actually this large. Li Fan couldn't help but feel slightly amazed. Aside from the usual positions, there were some strange and obscure roles he had never heard of. For example, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance Kongyan Sea Cultivator Feedback Collection Specialist, the Shailan State Liaison to Kongyan Sea, and the Earth Vein Supervisor. One face after another appeared in his mind. Li Fan had encountered many of these people before. He had always assumed they were just ordinary wandering cultivators, not realizing they held official positions. Most of the nodes had dimmed, indicating that these cultivators had either perished or were out of contact. But the number of active cultivators remaining was still quite substantial. It seems the main force for rebuilding the Immortal City will have to come from this group. However, the quality of these people varies greatly, and I only know most of them in passing. How can I select the right ones? Li Fan frowned, eliminating from consideration the cultivators who had already been captured by the Five Elders Association. He carefully reviewed the remaining cultivators. Suddenly, his gaze paused on one of the cultivators. This person, an idea instantly formed in Li Fan's mind. In a hidden cave somewhere in the Kongyan Sea. Gao Yuan, who had been in seclusion, suddenly woke up from a nightmare. The other day, the Five Elders Association had attacked the Kongyan Sea, forcibly taking the 10,000 Immortals Island and causing the deaths of hundreds of cultivators. Gao Yuan had narrowly escaped the disaster by being away on business at the time. However, the terrifying scene of those cultivators' deaths had burned into his mind, becoming his inner demon. I didn't expect the 10,000 Immortals Alliance to be so incompetent. They couldn't even defend an immortal city from being taken, and instead, they locked down the Kongyan Sea and vented their frustrations on their own people. And to think I've been loyally guarding the gates of the Ministry of Governance for decades. Maybe I should join the Five Elders Association instead. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Gao Yuan couldn't help but think this way. Just then, the official communication talisman, which he had assumed would never activate again, suddenly lit up. Gao Yuan's heart raced. He thought his treacherous thoughts had been discovered so quickly. But when he nervously picked up the talisman and checked it, his face showed an odd expression of excitement. Acting Island Lord Li Fan.